Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is John McCormick. I'm the mayor of the Township of Woodbridge, and we're happy to be able to host this event here tonight for four towns, Woodbridge, Metuchen, Edison, and South Plainfield, along with officials from Middlesex Water Company. A quick announcement, as many of you might know, the governor declared a state of emergency for tonight starting at 8 p.m. They expect heavy rain to start around 12:30. Our first report was 1 to 4 inches. We just heard that it might now be closer to 4 to 8 inches. There's going to be, I know, just what we need after Ida. So obviously heavy rains, gusty winds. Please be careful. So from Woodbridge Township, and we are mostly in the back, straight ahead, our business administrator, Vito Simaluka, his assistant, Casey Wagner, our health director, Dennis Green, assistant health director, Phil Bajowski, chief of staff, Carol Ehrlich, public information officer, John Haggerty, and sitting in the audience right in the middle there is our councilwoman, Debbie Meehan. We are all here to answer any of your questions afterwards. We'll have a question session tonight, but we're going to stick around afterwards to answer any questions one-on-one. For the record, so we know who's here, if you're from Woodbridge Township, please raise your hand. Wow, is anybody else here? All right. From South Plainfield, we have the business administrator, Glenn Cullen, the superintendent of schools, Noreen Lishak, Councilman Rob Bensavegna, and I'm told that South Plainfield is having a session with the water company on November 3rd, which is next Wednesday at South Plainfield High School. We also have from Metuchen, Council President Linda Koskoski and Councilwoman Dorothy Rasmussen. They are having a session on November 1st, 7:30 at Metuchen High School. From Edison, we have the OEM coordinator, Andy Toth, and I'm told, oh, first let me go back. Metuchen, please raise your hand if you're from Metuchen. Okay. All right, and if you're from South Plainfield, please raise your hand. All right, and if you're Edison, please raise your hand. Okay, so we got a little bit of everybody else. Andy Toth is here from Edison, and your meeting is the 28th at 7 p.m. at J.P. Stevens High School. So the water company will be available for all three of the other towns. Now, just to fill you in on what we've done, we all know each other, we work together, so we decided that it would be a good idea for us to pool our resources and get one consultant that we could all rely on to help us through this. So we engage a company called T&M Associates as our normal environmental engineer, and they do a whole lot of different projects with us. South Plainfield has the exact same consultant as their environmental engineer. Edison and Metuchen mayors and councils are both very familiar with T&M Associates. So they are going to be engaged, hopefully by the four of us. We'll probably take the lead and then go through the process, and then at the end, figure out a share to divide everything up depending on how much the fee is from the firm. But they have a good deal of experience. They have two municipal water utilities as clients, the Borough of National Park and the Borough of West Deptford in, I think it's Salem or Cumberland counties. They are their actual clients. They've been working with them on these issues. They have a great deal of experience with PFOAs. We had them on the phone for an hour today, the four mayors and their representatives, and we talked through with them a whole bunch of different issues, and we're very confident that they're the right firm to help us through this process. We also had a 1-hour call with the DEP today. There were about 5 different people from the DEP from different areas, and they went through a whole lot of things with us to educate us so that we knew more about what we were doing. So we are working together. The 4 towns are working together. There's really not much point in 4 of us hiring 4 different firms and doing 4 different meetings with everybody. So I'm very happy to report that Mayor Lanke, Mayor Bush, and Mayor Inesh are working with Woodbridge. The 4 of us are going to get through this together. So that's very good news. Now what's going to happen now is I'm going to turn this meeting over to Bernadette Soler to my left. She's from the Government Affairs liaison from Middlesex Water Company. She's going to facilitate this meeting. She's going to introduce all of the officials from Middlesex Water. They're going to make a presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, they're going to take questions and provide the answers, hopefully, or I'm sure if they can't get back to everybody with the answers. Many of you have filled out cards. They've been collecting them, so they know what a lot of the questions are. You know, we know it's about filters. We know it's about bottled water, all the questions that we've been getting in town hall, and I'm sure the other mayors and councils have been getting also. So they're going to be prepared tonight to answer all of those questions. If there's anything you don't know after tonight, you need something further quantified, there's the number for Middlesex Water will be provided tonight. I know if, at least from Woodbridge, you can call our office, call any council person, call our health department. We're happy to follow up, and as I said, we'll stay here late tonight and help you out. So I think that's all I need to say. Please be respectful, and please allow them time to make their presentation, and please allow them time to answer your questions, and tonight will go very well. Thank you very much. Bernadette Solar from Middlesex Water.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Mayor McCormick for offering this venue for Colonial High School for this important public education meeting. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for coming out this evening. Our goal is to hold this meeting in a respectful, courteous, and productive manner. So safe drinking water is essential to everyday life. We know it, and Middlesex Water has been committed to delivering that for over 124 years. We know that the letter some of you may have received appears concerning. I, too, received the letter. We're here tonight to explain that notice that you received, to explain the issue, because the required language around these complex regulations can be both confusing and appear alarming. We also want to help you better understand the risk, how we are working to correct it, and how we're going after the 3M company to hold them accountable. We know you have questions. We've prepared a short presentation to give you some background on this issue. We ask you to listen to the presentation and to hold your questions until afterward, because they may, in fact, be answered within the presentation. I thank all of you for writing your cards out and for turning those in. We will be addressing those after the presentation as well. I'll also be coming down later on to collect any additional cards if you have any other questions afterward. Right now, I'd like to now introduce our president and CEO of Middlesex Water Company, Dennis Dahl, who will make a few remarks and provide an overview.
Thank you, Bernadette. Good evening, everyone. Believe it or not, we are grateful to be able to spend some time with our customer base. Unfortunately, we wish it were under different circumstances, but we do want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I too want to thank Mayor McCormick. It was the mayor's idea to actually hold this event, which I think was a very good idea. So we're grateful for the opportunity to help clarify some of the questions you may have. We know there's some confusion. We know there's some anger. And we are hoping that we are able to answer your questions honestly and in a forthcoming manner. You know, as Bernadette said, we've been in business serving Middlesex County for about 124 years. And throughout that history, we really have prided ourselves on being honest and transparent with our customers. And frankly, if we've made mistakes, we'll admit them and we'll correct them. So tonight we're going to tell you what we know, we're going to tell you what we don't know, and why we've taken the actions that we've taken. So coming out of this meeting this evening, what's most important to me and to our company is that you come away believing that we've been honest with you. We have a slide presentation that I'm going to walk you through in a couple of minutes, but at the end of the meeting, you'll either believe what we tell you and what we share with you, or you won't. You'll believe that we were honest and forthcoming, or you won't. And that will be certainly your judgment to make. So I'd like to introduce a few more individuals sitting up here with me. First, we have Bob Fulliger. Bob is our Vice President of Operations. Bob is responsible for all aspects of water production and distribution for the company. Sitting to Bob's left is Dave Brokel. Dave is our Director of Production. Dave has overall responsibility for the company's treatment plants and all aspects of water quality. And then next to Dave is Mark Tyler. Mark is our Superintendent of Water Quality, and he works directly with Dave. So we have several experts up here this evening who can answer your technical questions, any technical questions you may have. So I'm going to walk you through the slide presentation now. We've also posted these slides on our website, and as was indicated, after we go through the slides, we will take your questions. Bob and Mark and Dave have passed out index cards. We have a very long list of cards. We're willing to stay here as long as we need to this evening to answer your questions, and I hope you come away with some information that you had not had previously. So this is just a snapshot of who we are and where we've been since 1897. We continue to invest in our drinking water infrastructure. When new regulations are established, we do take the steps to make sure that we can comply with those regulations. We modify treatment processes. We improve, upgrade, and replace our assets. And that's what's happened, and that's exactly what we're doing. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about the treatment. Oh, thank you, John. We'll speak a little bit about what we're doing at our treatment plant in order to make improvements to remediate this issue. So what are PFAS? It's a hard name to pronounce, polyfluoroalkyl substances, per and polyfluoral. They're a group of manufactured chemicals. They've been used in industry and consumer products since the 1940s because they're very useful. PFOA and PFOS are two of the most widely used and studied chemicals in the PFAS group. So one common characteristic of concern is that they break down very slowly. That's the problem, because in the drinking water they don't go away. Some refer to them as forever chemicals. And according to the US EPA, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, most people have been exposed to some types of PFAS, such as PFOA and PFAS, throughout their lives. So you can see the types of products where PFAS are found in packaged food sources, in popcorn bags, firefighting foam, Gore-Tex in clothing, Teflon in cooking, and carpeting, Scotchgard. These are all commonly known and used household products that contain some amount of PFAS. And then included there, you can see the list. As I mentioned, food packaging, household products, manufacturing for chemical production facilities, and in food, fish caught from water contaminated by PFAS, dairy products, and personal care products. You can find it in shampoos and dental floss and cosmetics, and in the soil near waste sites. And yes, it can be in the drinking water. So we think it's important that people understand the standards, why they are what they are and what they mean. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, who our company is regulated by, as well as the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, the U.S. EPA is the government agency responsible for setting all the legal limits for contaminants in tap water and overseeing all aspects of water quality. Currently, and this is important, this is why it's in bold, the EPA has no federal drinking water standard for PFAS compounds. It's still collecting data on health effects, it's still analyzing methodologies and treatment technologies. Now, the EPA has established a lifetime what's called a health advisory. It's not a regulation, it's an advisory of 70 parts per trillion for the sum of PFOA and PFAS in drinking water. The EPA level was established to provide a margin of protection to all Americans, as well as those who are immunocompromised or in special populations. Again, not a regulation. So about PFOA specifically, it's the most common of the PFAS compounds, and it's been detected in drinking water sources across the country. Middlesex Water Company and you, our customers, are no different than many other water systems in the state of New Jersey who were impacted by this, or across the country. So Middlesex has been testing for some PFAS as part of what they call the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Program, and we've been doing that for some time. We've been transparent in reporting the PFAS detections in the drinking water in our annual consumer confidence reports. I'm sure everyone has read them cover to cover every year. Well, I'm glad there's a little levity in the room anyway. But those reports are complex, they're very technical, and the average person doesn't understand what they mean. But the regulation requires that they're produced in that format. All of the information is there, but we'll admit it is very hard to understand. So utilities were required to start monitoring for PFOA and PFAS and report quarterly results after January 1st of 2021. So this is the first year where we were required to monitor and report. So New Jersey set the new strict regulation. You can see from that little chart on the left, as I indicated, the EPA Lifetime Drinking Water Voluntary Health Advisory is 70 parts per trillion. Then there was a screening guideline level at the state level, which was 40 parts per trillion. Again, not a regulation, just a screening guideline. New Jersey DEP enacted a new MCL. MCL is short for maximum contaminant level of 14 parts per trillion. So in 2020, DEP adopted the a true enforceable regulation, or MCL, of 14 parts per trillion, which significantly lowered the limit from the former guideline of 40 parts per trillion. Only 7 out of 50 states, which includes New Jersey, currently have enforceable drinking water standards for PFAS. They're far more stringent and far lower than recommended guidance as set forth by the US EPA. But nonetheless, there are a handful of states that chose to enact their own true regulation. So the detection methods have gotten more sophisticated. I've been in this industry virtually all of my career, and I remember when we were measuring contaminants in parts per billion, we thought that was a big deal. Now the technology has improved to the point where we can detect contaminants in parts per trillion, which is just unbelievable. So put the risk in perspective. The new PFOA MCL of 14 parts per trillion, 1 part per trillion is equal to 1 single drop of food coloring in 18 million gallons of water. 1 drop of food coloring in 18 million gallons of water. One single second out of 32,000 years. Put that in perspective, 1 second in 32,000 years, or 1 drop of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So the regulation is 14 parts per trillion. Above that level is a violation. So about the notice that you received in the mail, the newly established MCL limit is applied on the basis of a quarterly running average. I won't go into the technical aspects of the calculation, but these slides are also available on our website, and again, we'd be happy to answer any questions. But the reality is that the levels detected in our water were a bit above the new standard. So while our results were above the new strict level, they're still significantly below the EPA lifetime health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. We do believe at some point, okay, thank you. I'm glad John is here to keep me straight. At some point, we do believe EPA will set a maximum contaminant level at the federal level for PFAS contaminants, but they have not done that as of yet. So what is it? You received in the mail a letter with respect to a Tier 2 violation. What a Tier 2 violation means, it is not a health emergency, it is not an acute threat, and it poses no immediate health risk. If it were a Tier 1 violation, which would be a true health emergency, we would have been required by regulation to report that to you within 24 hours. So clearly, this is not a health emergency for the fact that it was characterized as a Tier 2 violation. Nonetheless, we were required to issue the New Jersey DEP-approved language to all customers who receive any amount of water from the groundwater treatment facility. We're not able to accompany that notice with any public education to further explain the notice, which is why we have added so many resources to our website. The language you received in the mail that was sent to your home is required language that needed to be approved by New Jersey DEP. This meeting tonight and the resources that we put on our website is our opportunity to share the company's perspective on these issues, which can be somewhat different than what you saw, or subject to different interpretation than what you saw in the mailing that went to your home. So understanding the risk, it's important to understand that water quality has not changed. The regulation has changed. There have been no changes in the drinking water for many, many years. It's only now that the standard has changed to a lower level that we now have this, the regulation in effect with the exceedance that was experienced. Exceeding the PFOA standard imposes no immediate risk, no immediate health risk or acute threat to your health. I can't stress that strongly enough. This is the basis on which the maximum contaminant level was set by the state. People who drink water containing PFOA over the MCL over a period of 70 years have a 1 in a million chance of an adverse health effect, which could be cancer, could have an adverse health effect from such consumption. 1 in a million chance over 70 years. So put that in perspective as well. So the research is still ongoing. This is all relatively new across the country. Part of the reason that EPA doesn't regulate it yet. There's a lot of data being gathered, a lot of scientific research being conducted, which suggests that exposure to high levels of certain PFAS over many years may lead to adverse health outcomes, such as developmental delays, disruption of hormones in the body, low infant birth weight, adverse effects on the immune system, among other effects. The letter that was mailed to your home included, frankly, if I wasn't knowledgeable of the issues, it would have scared the heck out of me as well, because it portrays a potential health emergency, which from our company's perspective, there is none. However, the research is still ongoing to determine how different levels of exposure can lead to a variety of health effects. The science is not mature, the research is not mature. So water from the well fields, PFAS is found in groundwater. It's not typically found in surface water. Most of our supply in the Middlesex system in eastern Middlesex County is from surface water, from the Delaware and Raritan Canal. The rest of it, is about 27%, comes from well field supplies. So water delivered to our customers from groundwater treatment facilities may be blended with supplies of our surface water, which lowers the level of the PFOA incidence. So how is Middlesex addressing PFOA? In 2019, we believed that the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection would ultimately be implementing a maximum contaminant level for PFOA. So we began evaluating treatment options. We looked at different removal methodologies. We have, as of now, completed the design of a facility for enhanced treatment, which will comply with the new regulation that's currently in effect. That plan is a $47 million project, which is ready to go to construction, but it will not be in service until mid-2023. The plant will use granular activated carbon, which is one of the proven effective methods against PFOA and PFAS. And once completed, this will support our compliance with this new, stricter standard. As I indicated, we're spending $47 million. It's a major project. It's very time-consuming to design and to construct. Now, we indicated up front that we have good evidence to believe that the PFOA, the PFAS, was put into the groundwater by the 3M company. We filed a lawsuit in district court against the 3M company, and we were initially trying to be pulled into the suit as a class action suit among many other water systems across the country who are also suing 3M. We were successful in not being included in the class action suit, so Middlesex is standing alone, which gives us, we believe, a better opportunity for a better outcome than might otherwise occur if we were part of the class action. So we were not the cause of this contamination. We have to clean it up. We have to comply with the regulation, and we will do anything and everything we can within reason to ensure that our customers are safe. If you were to ask me and our company, our perspective is the water is safe. I know that's one of the big questions that's coming across in the written comments. You can shower with it, you can bathe, you can do your laundry, you can feed your pets. There is no reason to believe that this is an acute health emergency. It is a Tier 2 violation. A Tier 2 violation merely requires notification, a notification that we have no discretion over what the message is that is shared. So what can customers do? If you have specific health concerns, a severely compromised immune system, have an infant or pregnant or elderly, or maybe at higher risk, seek advice from your healthcare providers about the notice. And we included that in the letter. That's the required language. I'll tell you that if you were to go to your physician tomorrow and say, I have a concern about PFOA, they're not necessarily going to have an answer for you, because this is all relatively new. Again, the research is not mature, so the medical community is at a disadvantage as to how to advise you. But nonetheless, that's the language that's required in the notification. So New Jersey DEP advises that infant formula and other beverages for infants such as juice should be prepared with bottled water when PFOA is elevated in drinking water. Well, what is elevated? Is elevated 14 parts per trillion? Is it 40 parts per trillion? Is it 70 parts per trillion? The word elevated doesn't give you any specificity whatsoever as to what you should do. And that's part of the challenge that we have. So one option is you can consider installing an in-home water treatment device, a water filter, that are certified to lower the levels of PFAS in your water. And I know some of you had questions about that in some of the comments that you wrote down. And we have our technical experts who can advise you as to what you should do relative to filters. Get to know more about your water quality by reading our annual water quality reports. And if you have questions about what you're seeing in those reports, by all means contact the company and we'll share whatever information we can to help you out. So that's a very quick, brief overview of the company's perspective of what we're dealing with. I hope you believe that we are sincerely concerned for your not only your physical well-being, but your mental well-being and the anxiety that this issue is causing. But we want to help to ensure that we can answer your questions and make sure that we give you some level of comfort that things may not be as bad as they're perceived to be. So with that, we will open it up for questions. Bernadette is going to read some, and I may point to some of our experts here at the table to provide some additional background. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, I'm going to go through some of the questions that we have received, and as you can imagine, a lot of them are duplicated. So here's the first one. And if PFOA were detected in August, why did it take until the end of October to be notified? So who's going to tackle that one? Dave?
Okay, we sample quarterly to meet the regulation. So it has to be sent out to a lab. So it goes out to the lab has to run the samples along with all the other samples they get in. So we don't get a report back for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, and then once we get the results, once the lab finally sends us the results, then we know what the levels are. So once we get the levels, it's got put into that calculation, and then it was determined that we're over the 14 limit, and that's when the clock starts for the Tier 2 notification. So you get 30 days or sooner to get out that notification. So, you know, you learn at the beginning of September. Then there's a couple weeks we had to get the notification approved by the DEP, and we also worked to get the notification limited to just those customers receiving the groundwater, because that's only 27% of our total production. So the rest of the customers did not need to be notified. So we have computer models that determine where that water can go. So we had to find that out, and then we worked with DEP to come up with the area that we needed to notify and the notification. And basically that is why it takes this long to send out.
Okay, next question is, how many times in the past 10 years have our levels been elevated? I'm sorry.
We can either agree or disagree with the regulatory process, but we have to follow it. If, as I indicated, if this were a Tier 1 violation, we would have been required by regulation to notify you within 24 hours. Because it was a Tier 2 issue, the DEP allows for up to 30 days to deliver the message. That statistic is the basis on which NJDEP established the maximum contaminant level. Excuse me, people. We can, listen, we're happy to take your questions from the floor, but we would hope that you would use the microphone so that everyone can hear, but we are going to go back and forth between the cards and questions from the floor. So please be respectful of the rest of the group.
I'll wait if you want to read one.
Go ahead, sir. No, go ahead.
Now, you said, did you either know about it in August or did you test for it in August?
Dave?
It said you knew about it in August. Is that when you first started?
Where's that coming from?
Even the microphone's up there.
We started testing in the first quarter of this year to meet the regulatory requirements.
The first quarter.
Yes. And we usually
That's a
sample.
little more than 3 months.
Right, so, but to be in violation, you have to have an average of the 4 quarters.
Well, you didn't mention that part, and that doesn't make sense. Why not send out a notice initially?
Did you get the one?
There's more. Are you drinking the water?
One more, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, well, if I just get one more, then I should probably make it a better one than are you drinking the water? Are you?
Absolutely. As I've indicated, we do not believe this is a health effects emergency.
Okay.
Sir, I have to ask others to give others a chance.
I have a bunch, but I'll do my one more, then I'll let other people go. Get closer to the mic. I don't want to upset it again. Closer. How's this? Everybody hear me all right? What is it that the EPA says 70 parts per trillion lifetime? Your number, is that a lifetime number or is that a yearly? How does that relate? Because that makes it sound like you can do that 70 parts per trillion over a lifetime. That's not a lot.
It's also not even a regulation. It's just a health
That's not an
advisory.
answer.
70 parts per trillion over a lifetime.
Okay, and what is your 14 parts per trillion? Is that
14?
yearly, lifetime? How does that relate?
That is also lifetime. They all are.
So if we drink 36 parts per trillion today, does that get added if I drink more tomorrow, since it is a persistent organic pollutant that builds in the body, which we would meet that 70 ppt?
No, it's not additive like that. It's just, if you drank water above the MCL over a lifetime, there's a 1 in a million chance of you getting cancer from it.
That doesn't make any sense.
Wait, you're saying, so if it's not 14 parts per trillion now, it's if I drank this for 70 years,
Yes.
I would have the 14 parts per trillion.
That is correct.
Okay. That's important.
Okay. Next question.
You can't be too close to the mic. I
Yeah.
think that's the issue.
Is the water safe for cooking, for dishwashing, and for laundry? Who wants to take it?
Yeah, so as we
Said
mentioned
that.
in the notice, the water is safe for consumption. Boiling the water will not help with this particular compound. I know there might be some confusion, as another notice that we have provided to customers in the past is boil water advisories for acute contaminants. As we mentioned, this is a chronic parameter, so it's perfectly safe to do your laundry, bathe with it, drink it.
Yeah, we wanted to address that because we had a question come in. Some customers who have work being done on their street may have received a door hanger that encourages them to boil their water because work was being done on their street. That is different from the letter that was advising about PFOA. So there's a little confusion there. When work was being done on their street due to a construction or due to water main, the short water main work, that short-term instruction was to boil water. But for the PFOA, which is a different matter, we've got a lot of work going on throughout these towns, folks. So the PFOA was a different instruction. The boiling water was not meant for PFOA because it has no impact on that.
Sir.
Thank you. I live in Avenel. A little over a year ago, my wife for the first time acquired blood clots. And then Labor Day weekend, she got these blood clots for a second time. Ended up for 4 days in the hospital. Over the past year, our dog has kidney failure, cancer. Over the past 2 years, my son's mother acquired cancer. I'm a heart patient. Probably has nothing to do with the water. This here. How many square miles is that?
The affected area.
many square miles is that?
I would be guessing, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you
Okay.
how many square miles
All
it
right.
is.
All this
it's about-
overdevelopment, you're saying groundwater, okay? Now, you said something about home house filters. Yeah, that popped into my brain over the past 3 days. Are you going to give every single house, every person in this room, a home house filter? Are you going to give us, pay for water filters, whole house water filters? Because, hey, I brush my teeth, I wash every day, I bathe every day. We need help. This is mind-boggling. You know what's going on around here. Okay, we need help. And this is, you can't tell us, because you know what, you go on your website. I actually forgot to bring it with me because I was in such a rush to get out of the house to get here by 7 o'clock. It says this stuff, these PFSAs were banned, but they're in everything. They're in everyday clothing and are in everyday life. So were they? It's hypocrisy. Were they banned or were they not banned? Okay, it's hypocrisy, and it's, you know, which is it? Okay, they're in our water. We are drinking this. Okay, and people are dying or they're gonna die. Okay, you're killing us. You're killing us.
Dave, you want to answer that second question?
Yeah, on your second question about, there's been new research. They didn't know, we didn't even know what the levels were years ago. Technology has come to a level where they can actually measure it, and then they do research based on those levels on what level would be acceptable. So when they make these water quality standards, they take into account all the other ways that you can get this chemical into your body from any kind of milk. It's been found in milk. It's been found in polar bears in Alaska. So now they've come up with a standard that makes sure that the water contribution won't be any more than what you're normally seeing in the background. Okay, so now that they have new regulations, then we can treat for it to know what it, because before then we didn't know what the hell.
Your plant's not going to go online until 2023, okay? I'm in construction. I got 40 years experience, all right? Are you going to give every house in this zone a whole house water filter? Tell us. Are you going to give us a whole house water filter?
The answer to that...
Are you going to... You're investing, you said $47 million you're investing? Okay, so you know what? What's every house... Okay, so another $2 million for every house in this zone? Are you going to help us and keep us safe? Put your money where your mouth is, right now. Put your money where your mouth is. Yes or no? Simple no. Simple. Yes or no. And then I walk away. Yes or no. And I walk away.
The answer to your question, as I indicated in one of the slides, a Tier 2 violation is not an emergency, it is not an acute threat, and it poses no immediate health threat.
That's not it. That's not a yes or no answer.
No, we're not providing filters.
You're not going to provide filters.
Because there's no health emergency.
So why are we here? If there's no health emergency, why are we here?
You're here because the information that came out under the required DEP notification is confusing and scary. That's why you're here.
Your letter scared the hell out of me. That's why I'm here. Okay, it scared the hell out of me. Okay, that's why we're all here. All right. So if there's no health emergency, but the thing is, like I said, you have hypocrisy in what's on your website and what you just told us here in your little cute little video
There is no
slide.
hypocrisy in what's on our website.
Oh, yes, there is.
I'm going to piggyback on him. When you use the words contamination, you're suing 3M.
Yes.
You're suing them, so obviously there's a problem.
Yes.
And then you use the word Tier 1, Tier 3, Tier 2. That's not in the letter you mailed. No one mentioned Tier 1 or Tier 2
Correct.
in the mailing that we got.
Thank you.
You handed that out as we got here.
The letter that we sent in the
You
mail...
use the word contamination.
Thank you.
You're suing 3M, enforceable drinking standards.
Thank you, my friend.
You have to supply us with something to filter the drinking water. Like he said, you're killing us, and you're the CEO, you're standing there, you're asking questions off. You answer every question anybody gives you. That's your job. You're the CEO, you're in charge. So when you use the word contamination, nobody's supposed to touch anything that's contaminated. So don't say the water is safe when it's not. When you use your words on these letters, it's contaminated. Nobody should drink contaminated water. No one should bathe in contaminated water.
Ma'am.
That's your responsibility.
Thank you.
By that logic, the clothing we're wearing is contaminated. The fast food that we're eating is
That's semantics.
contaminated.
That's nonsense.
Let me
I don't
finish,
drink
please.
and eat my clothing.
Let me address your question.
I don't drink my clothing.
Let me answer your question. By using words like "you're killing us" is just inflammatory, and it's not helping us get to the root cause of the issue, and to give you an honest assessment of what we know and what we don't know.
Overdevelopment?
So the water's so safe, but you're suing 3M.
Yeah.
Which 3M notified.
We're suing 3M to recover the cost of the $47 million project, so we don't have to put the cost of that project on our customers' rates.
$2 million more dollars or so, we would all have home house filters.
We've heard your question.
Please give some, yes ma'am.
Thank you for being here. If you can please bear with me.
I'm sorry, we can't.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. If everybody could just please for a moment.
Please.
Please, if everybody could please allow everybody a chance to speak, please. We're all here together, right? We're all family, mothers, brothers, sisters, community. Thank you for being here. And just to piggyback off the point, I live in Colonia. I work in Edison as a health inspector. You say this is not an acute health hazard. I agree with you. However, what about the women in here who are expecting their first child? Or the babies who live in Edison and in Metuchen and in Colonia who are not able to be nursed at their mother's breast and have to resort to formula, which no shame in that, and they're utilizing the tap water, which you're saying is safe. You're talking about an innocent infant. You're talking about, here, I want to show you. These are my two innocent children, my two innocent sweet boys, who I have to put bowls of water and pour bottled water in them. William, don't swallow the water, sweetheart, it's contaminated. What is your answer to that? Because I agree with you that it's not acute. What about years from now, when people experience liver damage? Because this PFOAs bioaccumulate. We are all different in our molecular composition, in our health status, and this doesn't break down, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's microbiologically inert, which means it does not break down in the environment, and it is persistent in the environment. So it's just going to continue. And I believe in your initial letter that came out October 21st, but was dated October 22nd, which was last Friday, you state in there that it's going to continue. It's persistent, and it's not going to stop. And if there was a point source pollution issue in 2019, you're saying, by 3M, why not get the wheels turning then? And I agree, each household, and please, and I'm sorry I'm all over the place, each household at least should be provided with some kind of adequate filtration system. Absolutely. And let me just say one more thing. Were establishments and residents kind of picked and chosen who received notification? Because I know for a fact that there were establishments in Colonia and Edison, businesses, restaurants, schools. I understand public schools in Edison were notified. I saw the letter myself. However, one of the private schools, the chef let me know, we didn't receive anything. What are you talking about? We serve 500 people per day. I understand some schools are not cooking, but some schools are. Was every restaurant notified? Don't boil the water, because I get Nixle alerts, which, by the way, I did not get. My niece had to text me and say, did you check your mail? I always get a Nixle alert when there's a boil water order or a boil water advisory. So I think many people initially assumed, well, I can boil my water for 10 minutes, let it cool, and then utilize it in that way. That is not the case. You cannot boil this chemical, this toxin. If you're familiar with botulinum toxin, once it forms spores, you cannot get it out of your food source. So you're telling me I should just continue to boil my pasta for my kids and then feed it to them? What's the residual? What is the residual? If I have to wash my romaine lettuce, do I use bottled water or filtered water, or can I use my tap water? Because I don't believe that was answered before. And I'm asking, can I use my tap water to wash my produce What is the residual if I dry it off? That's not going to cut it. I'm sorry. I appreciate you being here, but this does not cut it. Do I need to wash my produce for my family with bottled or filtered water? Somebody please answer that question.
The answer is no.
No. What's the residual?
I don't know how to say it any more simply than the statistic we shared.
Okay.
That if you consume more than 14 parts per trillion over approximately 70 years,
Gotcha.
you have a 1 in a million chance of getting cancer. I mean, that's the basis on which the state established the maximum contaminant level.
So nobody cares about the children or our future. No one cares about that, right?
The water is safe.
The water is safe. I had some. Then why does your letter state don't consume your tap water unless it is adequately filtered? How is it safe if you're telling us, Middlesex Water is telling us, don't consume the water?
You may not have heard me describe at the front end of the presentation that the New Jersey DEP requires that language that was included in that initial letter. We had no say in what was included in that letter. This is our opportunity.
So as long as the liability is taken care of, then it's all good.
I'm just telling you what we're supposed to do relative to the regulation.
I am calm, ma'am.
The water is safe.
It's not safe though. It's not, your letter is saying don't consume
That is
the tap water. So what are you saying? You're the experts. What are you saying? What is your answer to that? You are the experts up there.
I'll ask our Director of Water Quality to share the same issue.
I don't think it says that.
I have a copy of the letter. Would you like it that went out?
I received the letter,
Okay.
so we have it.
Oh, this is it.
We-
Okay, now
Let them answer,
We please have attention, please, so Dave can answer the
The notice
question.
says that if you have any questions, you contact your health provider if you have any medical questions, because we're not doctors. We know how to treat the water, but we're not doctors. So you need to consult your doctor about what you need to do. And it says,
How do you know it's 1 in a million a chance of getting cancer if you're not a medical professional? How are you giving us that information?
That information is coming from the New Jersey Department of Environmental
that's from
Protection.
the EPA and the NJDEP use a formula based on those numbers to come up with the maximum contaminated limit.
Understood. But again, this bioaccumulates in your blood and in your liver.
Okay, ma'am,
We are
I'm sorry,
all
but there
people here.
are a lot of people who have
Okay,
questions.
good.
So
Please notify every school next time. Don't just pick and choose on the schools. Don't
we're
just
not
pick and
picking and
choose.
choosing.
Some schools were not notified. I know that for a fact. Some schools were not notified.
We have we'll go back and forth between people on the cards. We have a question here. Is the sample that was taken at the well field representative of what is delivered to a house?
It is similar. It depends on the system. Our system has 3 sources of water, so there's blending going on. So the closer you are to the source that may have the high number, you're going to get that high number. As you move further away, it gets diluted by the other water. So the highest it can be is the numbers that we see here. As you go further away from the plant, they get lower.
I want to know, where is it higher? Like, where is the higher region?
If you look at the map, it's going to be the top left-hand side of your map is where our groundwater, our wells are. So if you live in that area, if you're like 100 feet away from where our facility is, these are the numbers that you're going to get. As you get further away from that and closer, as you move south, it's going to be less.
Here's another question. Why, or do other water companies in this area or in the state have this problem?
The answer is yes. There are numerous municipal systems who have issued identical language that we issued relative to the DEP's requirements. They're all dealing with the same thing. We're actually further ahead than most of them in design and construction of a plant. I'm sorry, but listen, to be respectful to the group, we're not going to answer questions that are coming from the crowd, either individuals at the microphone or the written questions. So, sir, you're next.
Hello, Frank from Colonia. Just first of all, thanks for being here. I know sometimes it's very hard to do these things because, you know, it's the public-private discussion here. But I want to bring up something. I think history is a good guide when these kind of situations arise. And I noticed that through my own research in Merrimack, New Hampshire, there was a very similar case with the PFAS in the water. There were issues that citizens were concerned about autoimmune issues. They were concerned about other things, kidney, organ issues. Some of the takeaways they had was, number one, in the schools, they immediately asked for filtration in all the schools at the water fountains, specifically with the NSF-type filters, P473, which actually is rated to filter out the PFAS. And second, they also initiated blood testing for the citizens, especially those who had long-term exposure. I think one of the things they found out was their blood levels were actually twice the background rate of the PFAS when they did the blood testing. So I know you have a lawsuit with 3M, and I'm curious if either you or our local government agencies would somehow make money available for, number one, for filtration in the schools, and number two, for blood testing for those citizens who are concerned. Any comment on that, sir?
Sure. First of all, I'm generally familiar with the example you raised in New England, and there are other parts of the country as well. And my understanding is in those areas, the level of the PFOA in the blood, in the drinking water, was dramatically higher than what we're dealing with at 14 parts per trillion, or even 70 parts per trillion, or even 150 parts per trillion. Those, if you do the research in those areas, you will find that it was literally a multiple of what we're talking about here. Absolutely, at extraordinarily high levels, it is a significant health risk. That's not what we're dealing with here. At 14 parts per trillion, or a little bit above 14 parts per trillion, it is not an acute health risk. Over the long term, over 70 years, I say it again, 1 in a million chance of contracting cancer is the basis on which the state of New Jersey established that maximum contaminant level. So I can't say it any more simply than that. Ma'am?
To lower it a little. Good evening, my name's Alyssa Davey from Woodbridge, a lifetime Woodbridge resident. I'm 42. I graduated in 1997. 4 of my classmates from high school had cancer, including my best friend who had breast cancer. Her husband, everyone grew up in Woodbridge, had testicular cancer, which these PFAS chemicals are linked to. I myself have an autoimmune condition. I've had 10 major surgeries and have had to go out on long-term disability. I'm not able to work. I recognize that this is not the fault of your company, but I just want to clarify that these are quote-unquote forever chemicals, correct? Is that a correct terminology?
That is the term that's being used, yes.
So I was born in the house that I live in now. I'm 42 years old. I've been consuming the water in this area for 42 years. The half-life of these chemicals, based on my research, is approximately 3 years. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you?
The half-life of these chemicals?
I don't know the answer to that.
No, they don't degrade at all. So
They don't degrade at all. So for my 42 years of life living in Woodbridge Township, I've been consuming the water in this area. This problem did not start yesterday. It did not start in August when the water was tested. It did not start in January when you first started testing this water, correct? There's many in the South Plainfield area. If you search chemical companies, I found 20 different chemical companies. I know you said it's most likely 3M, but there's also contaminants from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s in that area, in the marsh area there, that it's cumulative. So my friends and I have been consuming this water our entire lives. How can that not be contributed? And these are just people that I know of. One of my classmates, a good friend of mine, passed away from cancer of the bile ducts. It's too coincidental that it's not related, and I'm not trying to put fault on you guys, because I know it's not your fault, but to simply say 1 in a million chance, or whatever the statistic is, I think everyone would agree that, you know, based on family history, everyone that's grown up in Woodbridge, I don't know if there's lifelong residents like me, that know many people who are very, very ill. I had to shave my best friend's head when she was going through chemo. At 35. Her husband came down with testicular cancer 4 years later. I'm not looking for culpability from you, but we need some alternative to waiting 2-3 more years for this new filtration system to be installed.
If you let me, Dave, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know how much water you would have to consume on a daily basis for 70 years?
I think it's like they base it on 8 cups of water a day for 70 years. But I just want to let you know that this chemical has been around, only started, I guess, in the late 70s when it was first discovered.
Right.
So
I was
there's
born in
nothing
1979,
before
so
that.
that was 9 years
So-
that the chemical had to start infiltrating our groundwater.
So 8 cups, you'd have to consume 8 cups
You know,
a
I'm
day.
a nurse, so, you know, when you take a certain pill and you take another one 4 hours later, there's a cumulative effect. So it's not just the small amount.
Ma'am, I sympathize with your experience with your family and your friends, but I can tell you in all honesty, the water is not causing cancer. I believe that in my heart. I believe it in my
I'm not saying
soul.
the water today. I'm saying the water we've consumed over the past 42, 50, 60, 70 years.
As Dave indicated, 8 cups a day, which is 64 ounces a day, you would have to drink for 70 years to have a 1 in a million chance of contracting cancer from the water. Byrne, you want to take another one?
I'll take another one. This has to do with how the calculation is figured out. So if the results, and this was one of the slides, and it was also in the notification letter, if the results are 25, 23, and 36, how does that mean, excuse me, how does that mean we are over 70? Or there was another calculation in there that equaled 21 parts per million. How is it actually calculated that, and what does that have to do with 70 parts per million? Dave?
Okay, the regulation is based on a running quarterly annual average. So you sample for 4 quarters, and then you average it. So when they start a regulation, you start at, your first quarter. But once you get to your third quarter, you get an idea whether you're going to go over or not. So if you take your first 3 quarters and divide it by 4, and your number is still above the level of the regulation of 14, you are going to be in violation. So that's why we went into violation in the third quarter rather than waiting to the fourth quarter. So that does speed that up a little bit as well.
What type of filter do you suggest we use until the problem is resolved? Go ahead.
Who's gonna pay for it?
There's 3 types of treatments that you could use for
Please.
PFOA, and that is reverse osmosis, granulated activated carbon, and then ion exchange. Those are the 3 treatment methods. Now, if you need to find a filter to use, we gave some good information on our website of where you can go to have certified filters that will remove that, because not all filters. Ion exchange.
Ion exchange.
Okay. Sir, would you?
I don't believe either of those will, the pure.
Reverse osmosis system?
Sir, we're only answering questions from the microphone or from the table. Sir, you're next.
Hi. I have a couple of questions that kind of go together. So we had a tier 2 alert, right? So what exactly constitutes tier 2 versus tier 1?
Okay. Dave?
Good question. There you go.
Okay, a tier 1 is something that could hurt you in a short time. There's immediate health risk. Say bacteria or virus in the water. That'll get you sick right away. Now, that's a tier 1. There's one other item, another chemical, nitrates. If they're at a certain level, that's another one that's an immediate acute health risk, and those are tier 1s. Now, tier 2 are what they call chronic, the long-term requirements, so that they set these MCLs based on drinking water over a lifetime.
Okay.
So that's the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 2. That's why we're not required to do a tier 2 immediately, because the health effect is not immediate.
Potentially, unless there's, babies and pregnant mothers.
Right, and we do say in there that,
Yeah,
if you have questions, you talk to your physician.
I understand that. And then also, so the numbers that you gave us, the 36 part per trillion, is that from the blended with the ground and the surface water, or is that straight out of that well from the groundwater?
It's out of the well field. We have like 17 wells in that well field, and the requirement is based on point of entry. So that's where the water enters the distribution system. So that number is from where the water enters the distribution system. And as we said before, as it spreads out through the distribution system and blends with some of the other water, it will get lower, but it won't go any higher than that.
So that's just from the well water, the groundwater?
Right, just from that well field in that left-hand corner.
And what causes such volatile shifts? I mean, you're talking about a 30+% shift in a quarter. You're talking about going from 21 parts per trillion to 34, 36?
Well, there's 18 wells, as I said, and they're all different levels of the PFOA in it. So depending on when we sample and what wells we have on, that can vary the number. But over time, it looks like it's just going to average in the mid-20s is where we would be over a long time.
So you've sampled 3 so far?
We've sampled more. We've actually put that in our CCR over time.
Okay.
So that's been in there more, but based on other sampling we've done before the requirement came through, we're averaging in the mid-20s coming out of there. So that would be the highest you'd see.
Okay. All right, so here's another one. The letter we received in the mail is different than the letter we received upon walking in here, the letter to customers. Why is that?
So as indicated previously, the letter that went out in the mail was a required communication by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. They determined what language needed to be included. We were uncomfortable because we knew it was going to create anxiety among our customer base, but they had final say in what it is we can communicate. The letter that we distributed this evening was the company's viewpoint as to the extent to which this is or is not a health risk. So we wanted to give you the company's side of the story rather than the boilerplate regulatory language that was required by DEP. And in the end, you, the customer, you, the consumer, have to decide based on what we've shared with you and what is in that required communication from DEP as to whether or not you believe that this is a health effect affecting you. You have to make that ultimate decision, and possibly with your physician. It is the company's belief the water is safe. You can use it for all the normal uses that you've been over the years. It's just a matter of a notification that was required as a result of the Tier 2 violation. Sir?
Yes, I want to go back to the filter question. Are you saying that activated charcoal is what your plant's going to use, but we can't buy the home ones? In other words, the home ones that, like in the refrigerator filter, or the Brita filter, or the Pure, all of these brands, they use activated charcoal. So isn't that what your plant's using? Can we use it or not?
No, I don't believe so. The EPA has done studies on that, and those filters do not work reliably to do that. So you need to use the granular. Those are powdered, that carbon, and I don't know exactly why, but that makes a difference in how it's absorbed onto the carbon.
So if one is really concerned, they should invest in that reverse osmosis or the ion one that you mentioned. You said 3 of them?
Right. There's 3 different treatment options, but there's a number of companies out there that make treatment devices that will remove the PFOA. You just need to take a look and see what's out there and make a decision based on that.
Got it.
Because we can't recommend whatever filter because we don't manufacture them. So we can just point you in the right direction.
Gotcha. All right, but I just wanted to clarify. In other words, the inexpensive ones, probably not so much.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You got to go with the more expensive.
Yeah, it would have been nice if that worked, yes.
Okay. Next question. I live in a homeowners association. I don't have a direct relationship. Like the homeowner has the thing, and we have a sub-metering company, and we're not getting your notices. Like I heard about this through Facebook groups and what have you. In other words, I'm not getting it. Who do I speak with at your company to make sure that the individual residents on my block, which is, half a mile from here, get notices when there's any kind of water issue, including the boil water notices and stuff like that? Because we're not getting it directly.
I believe the answer is we're required to communicate with the customer of record.
Again, if the customer of record is a homeowners association,
Right.
but then it certainly doesn't get in a timely fashion to the individual homeowners. So do you have a system for communicating with individual homeowners in a situation like that? And if not, how do we get one set up? Because this is not responsible. We are customers. We have a single hookup for the whole community, and there are 53 units, and the 53 units don't have individual accounts with you.
My understanding is that the customer of record is responsible for anything that happens after the meter. The bill goes to the customer of record, the communication goes to the customer of record. We don't have the information relative to every resident of every rental unit, of every homeowners association. All we have is the customer of record.
Is there a way to sign up, in other words? Is there no way for us to register and say, here, we live here, we're getting your water, can you put us on your notification list?
I don't believe it's something we've ever explored before, but that's certainly something we can take a look
Because
at.
I would appreciate.
I mean, with the way social media works these days, obviously there are options available.
I understand, but in other words, this is disconcerting. My particular block, not far from here, they dug up and shut off the water numerous times, and we had boil water notices that we didn't get because of the situation.
Okay, what we will do is research that question, and we will put the answer on our website.
Okay.
And
Is there someone I could follow up with?
Bernadette Solar, our Vice President of Corporate Communications, of Corporate Affairs, her department would handle that.
All right, Ms. Soler, I'll be following up. Listen, I have one silly question while I'm here. It's too obvious. You probably thought about this. If all the contamination is coming from the wells, can't you get all your water from the river temporarily? I mean, can't you just get all the water from the surface and not use the wells until you get your treatment plant done?
The surface is the Delaware and Raritan Canal, which is all the way over, runs parallel to the Raritan River in New Brunswick, which is nowhere near this well field. I mean, you can solve any problem with enough money. You're probably looking at several $100 million to build a pipeline that would probably take 5+ years to do. We have a project that will be, I know it's not quickly enough for anyone, but within the next 2 years, it will be fully functional and it will remediate the problem.
I mean, I'm just wondering, I mean, have you guys thought outside the box just a little bit and said, are there other places we get water temporarily besides, these other places that this would, not even be an issue until you get your treatment solution done?
Our options are limited, but we are looking at options.
I'm looking at this guy, the Vice President of Operations, because he looks interested in what I'm saying.
He's the pipeline guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our ability to, in the system, to get the water from point A to point B.
Right.
So we did think of that.
Okay.
My concerns are, would we be able to provide enough water to those areas in South Plainfield for fire protection?
Sure.
That's kind of what it comes down to, really. So it's.
Could you hook up the contaminated water or the PFOA water to the fire and leave the drinking water to everybody else?
Yeah, the fires don't care. If it worked that way, that would be great, because fires don't care.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think we got a lot of these. We'll take another one from the floor.
Okay, sir?
This is a real simple one. To bombard you folks with emotion is senseless. You guys don't know. We don't know. What I do want to know, and it's interesting because you said you got this letter too, what are you going to do in your house? What are you guys doing in your own home? Is there any concern? If the answer is nothing, then it's nothing, and I'll take it, but
I'm not doing anything.
nothing at all.
I'm not doing anything different.
As a volunteer firefighter, when I was younger, and I'm a little annoyed about it, I wouldn't say we played with the foam, but we used to use foam all the time. We would exercise it, and you get it on yourself. So
Firefighting foam, he's
I'm a little more annoyed about that than I would be about. But no, I drink it every day. I work here every day. I drink the water here every day. I don't live in this system. But I know from my consumer confidence report, I'm into those things. that I've got stuff in it where I live that I see in my consumer confidence report. I'm not as worried about it as I am that acute exposure that I had I don't play with it anymore, but as a younger firefighter, yeah, that bothers me. But I mean, it's in my clothes. I wear stain-resistant clothes. It's in my clothes. It's in my carpet. It's on the couch that I love to sit on. So, no, but I'm absorbing it, right? So you can ingest, you can absorb, and it can be adsorbed.
Thanks. Human answer, human question. Thank you.
I don't know, do we answer this one? If the new standard had been in place 1 to 2 years ago, would we have been in compliance with the standard that exists now?
We try to stay informed and educated about where the US EPA and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection are going with future regulations. Bob networks with DEP routinely, and others in our company do as well, Dave and Mark. So we have contacts there. We try to stay informed as to where regulation is going. When we concluded several years ago that it was likely that a maximum contaminant level was going to be established as a regulation, that's when we started doing the analysis and the engineering to design a treatment facility in anticipation of the more stringent guideline. So it's all about when we believe, based on recommendations from DEP, as to when a regulation is going to go into effect. Sir.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Ricky. I'm a teacher in the district. I live in the district, and I have 3 young daughters that go to school in the district. My first question is to piggyback off the idea of the gentleman in regarding to our students in our school. 2 years is too long to wait for our students. Bottled water costs $2.25 a bottle at our high school. Could there be money or funds available to supply bottled water to our students, because our water fountains are not going to suffice anymore? So if that's my first concern.
As Dave indicated, we believe the average coming out of our treatment facilities is going to be approximately 20 parts per trillion or thereabouts, which, yes, it's above the maximum contaminant level, but as we've indicated, we don't believe even at 20 parts per trillion it's a health emergency. Our view would be that the water is safe to drink for students in schools, for people in their homes, people in nursing homes. It's, again, if people have specific concerns, they should talk with their healthcare professional. But we, the company, believe
Gotcha. I heard that. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to be close on the time. What does NJDEP stand for?
New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.
So as I understand it, your private company is saying that this is not dangerous, but the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection is saying it is dangerous. My concern is there's a discrepancy there. You're defending your company versus a government body telling us that this water is dangerous. So I know we're not going to go nowhere with my first concern, but that's where we are with our students. Our students are paying $2.25 for a bottle of water that they can't access their water fountain.
New Jersey DEP is not saying the water is dangerous. What they are saying, what was included in that letter, it is up to the individual to conclude, are they telling me the water?
You're in violation, a second-degree violation, which means it's chronic. So yes, you are. It is dangerous. That's why we're notified. You said that multiple times. One more thing. In your presentation, you noted that we're pulling 27%, roughly 20%, or even lower than 27% from the wells, and then 70% pulled from the surface water, and you explained that the surface water is less contaminated with the PFAS than the groundwater. If that number was true, and correct me if I'm wrong if I didn't see it correctly, 70%, why don't we just pull from the surface as opposed to pulling from the groundwater?
That goes back to the question that the other gentleman had asked before. In order for us to get it from the surface water source up to South Plainfield, which is where our well fields are, we would need more infrastructure. We would need bigger pipelines to do that. We don't have the big enough pipelines to supply that area from the groundwater, the surface water source.
Could we make that 70% better? That's just a thought. If 30% is being supplied by this dirty water and 70% is being supplied by the surface, we could fix this problem tomorrow, 70%. And then we could isolate and supply bottled water for the rest of the community, or even filters for the 30%. Just a thought. The last concern I had, it was the disagreement with the DEP. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And if I could just, I tell my family, don't drink bottled water. I don't go for it. You don't know how long those bottles have been sitting in a warehouse, in a trailer on a summer day. I tell my family, don't drink bottled water.
Okay, here's another question. With the new well treatment, how low do you expect readings to be? Do you have any idea of an expected estimate? So in terms of, when the new plant is built.
We expect it to be non-detect, meaning the analytical methods they use cannot detect it. But we plan on staying below the 14. We have to change out the carbon depending when it gets used up. So we will have a process to change that out, but we plan on keeping it at least below half the MCL. But most likely it'll be non-detect for most of the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kate Henderson, 70 years old, so I'm at the 70 mark, immunocompromised. I'm a retired academic professor at one of the local universities, and I also certify the health departments for their pool operators. So I know a little bit about water, not a lot, but enough to certify health department officials. I have two concerns. One is my garden. I have spent years making an organic garden in my backyard. We pride ourselves on being New Jersey's big tomato growers. I just took my entire garden down, took the beams down. I'm digging the soil up because I realized I have been watering every day, 3, sometimes 4 times a day, my garden, and those vegetables are now, the crops aren't there. I used to feed the whole street with the extras that used to come up in the garden. I want to let you know, one, the crops are not growing in the garden. And I'm right on that borderline where they fought 70 years ago in Dukes Estates, where they were going to put the water line for our section, whether it was going to be Union County or Middlesex to give us our water. My mother used to take us on a wagon up to the local gas station to get our water. That tells you how far back I go. So the first question is our garden safe to grow vegetables? The second one comes into the concern of pools. A lot of people have pools. We rely on them. We teach aqua tots classes, baby and me classes. We're dipping the kids in like tea bags in the water. They drink in a lot of water. If they've been using water in their formula and swimming classes in the water, I want to know what assurances we're going to have, because I won't lie to you, my hair has been coming out. I have 21 vials of blood taken out every 3 months because they don't know what's wrong with me. And the doctors, I have 6 of them, all in the same Summit Medical portal, and they're all communicating back and forth. I have blood disorders with chemicals in my blood that they don't know where it's coming from. I don't know where it's coming from, and I'm not a dumb woman. And I speak for a lot of the seniors here. We don't get the communications you think we get. I don't buy newspapers anymore. It's not in my budget. I don't get cable like I used to because it's too expensive. Seniors need to be told what's going on, and we're being left in the dark. And as for the letter, I read my mother's 93, and she is the woman of record. She didn't get a letter because I opened her mail. I pay her bills. I want to know what you're doing to communicate better. And Mac, I don't know if you're still here, Mayor Mac? Mayor Mac, you are so good at calling us 3 times a week throughout the COVID crisis, and every Friday and Monday to let us know how many are still alive, how many are sick, and how many are dead. Why didn't you call us on Friday? That's what I'm angry at.
Go ahead, sir.
I just have a couple of quick questions. I'll keep them pithy. Is there some sort of home test, like a litmus paper, something a way for us to see if this chemical is in the water, like just some sort of quick home test that you know of?
Unfortunately, no. The test probably costs around a couple $100. And you have to have a certified lab.
This has got to be sent out.
Such the low levels.
Okay, so there's not a quick one. Okay, so now we could safely assume that this stuff's been in the water for about 40 years or something like that, since you say it's from chemical plants from past. has the concentration been trending down, I guess, over the years? Like, I mean, clearly there's no more, it's not a lot of this pollution going into the ground, or is it maintained level? Are you following the question? Like, I guess over the years, could it have been considerably higher, let's say 35 years ago, and now it's less?
It could have been. All I can say is we've been analyzing for this since about 2008.
It's about 10 years.
And the levels have been pretty consistent.
Consistent, okay.
Okay, but we have no idea what it was before because the technology to measure it was not there. And we didn't even know it was in the water.
Right, because,
as much as it was.
Right, and 2 or 3 years from now, we'll figure out another chemical that, that you're probably not testing
Exactly.
for. So, right, I understand that. Again, to piggyback off the question with the other guy, because I just didn't understand, when you said with the mixing of the water, are you drawing that surface water through the, and like when you're saying it's mixing, because you can't get it from the, let's say directly from the groundwater, and you have to get it from that underground, as you call dirty water, so to speak. Is it kind of like the fuel system in a car where you have to drag it through, the whole thing before you get from the gas tank to the engine, and it's got to be dragged through the well field that you're talking about? There wouldn't be a way of doing like a bypass, not directly from the source to there, but from before it reaches the leaching field, and then bypassing to hit everybody. If we have enough rain in the reservoirs and everything, and maybe during a drought pull it up, warn us, but because we've had a ton of rain. And maybe you're saying it's only 20% of that water. So 80% could be dragged through, bypass it, just, build an outside line, like an outside pipeline above the ground if it's only going to be there a year or two. Just a thought, is that a possibility?
And that goes back to the first gentleman who asked, and then the other gentleman who asked about we don't have the pipe infrastructure in the ground to be able to support that right now. So we would need to construct a pipeline to go from the surface water source up to South Plainfield in order to.
It has to go all the way, okay.
It's got to go quite a way.
I don't understand the magnitude of it.
It's not necessarily doorstep to doorstep, but it's going to be, from that Edison area up to South Plainfield to do that.
Right, okay, because
it's miles.
Okay, so it is. Okay, so it's considerable, I guess.
And it's not a little pipe. This would be a pretty decent sized pipe.
Right, so it's not like you draw groundwater here and then you pull from this when you need it. It's all in one line, effectively.
The water moves back. When Dave says it blends, the water kind of moves back and forth
naturally,
depending on. Sure.
It's not you guys opening and closing check valves.
It's not us opening and closing valves. It's really it's customers using water. So it's
That's what I thought. All right, and there's really no way of distinguishing depending on which specific neighborhood I live in as to whether I'm getting that water or not. I guess it's because it said in the original letter it said, well, we think you might be getting it from time to time. It's a continuous flow, is what it is. Effectively, I guess I'm not articulating the question well.
To put it in perspective, the well field puts out anywhere from 6 to 10 million gallons a day. So that's a lot of water. All right, and depending on the demand in the system, that's where that moves around.
It's all automatic.
So it just floats, because I don't know if you've seen our tanks next to exit 10 on the turnpike.
Right.
Those are the tanks that float the pressure on our system.
But it's all automatic, is what you're saying.
Right, so it fills up and goes up and down on demand, and where the waters from the different sources meet, depending on which is producing more, it might move a little bit, but it's nothing we can really control.
Right, so heavy rain seasons wouldn't mean we're getting more diluted water versus...
Unfortunately not.
All right. I was just curious. Appreciate the answer.
Okay, here's another question. Who is the source of the PFOA at the plant? And if this is so dangerous, why doesn't the federal government regulate it?
Dave?
What's that?
Well, we think we know who polluted it, and the federal government is looking at it, but they have different criteria that they use to determine this. And New Jersey is allowed by regulation to do their own. So they decided that to be on the safe side, they wanted to regulate it on their own and at a much lower level. Now, we have to wait and see what the federal government's going to do now, because it seems like they're finally discussing actually putting out a regulation. So if they come out with a number that's lower, then New Jersey has to go to that lower number. But if they come out with a higher number, New Jersey's still going to stay with its 14.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered the question.
That was from the cards.
Oh, okay.
Sir?
Yeah, the question regarding the filters, you had mentioned three a few speakers ago. The reverse osmosis, the granular activated carbon, and the ion. Is there one that's better than the other? If I were to put in a whole home system, which would be the best way?
I believe they all work. It depends on cost and how often you have to change out the media. Say with the granular activated carbon versus ion exchange. It gets used up, and then you have to get rid of it and put new stuff in.
Right.
So it's how quickly that gets used up. And they absorb at different rates. So that has to be taken into account. Reverse osmosis seems to remove it no matter what, but there's a reject stream. I don't want to get too technical.
Right. I understand that wastes about 50% of the water in the backwash.
It's not quite so bad. For reverse osmosis, you could probably get less, like maybe 20% rejection.
All right. And it has to be a granular activated carbon?
Correct.
And you were saying that the other, what
The powdered
solid?
activated carbon does not work. It doesn't absorb it as well. I'm not exactly sure why, but the EPA has done studies, and they confirm that.
All right, and if a company is saying that they use a solid carbon, is that granular or, I mean?
I would think so, but
How do
you'd
you
have to ask
distinguish?
them. I think you'd have to ask them. There is a list of companies that make filters or treatment that remove the PFOA listed on the NSF website.
Right.
Which is, we have a link to it on our website.
Right, I've been on that.
Yes. So I'd start there to look at who manufactures them, and then you can call them and say, hey, I need this to remove, because you know about how much PFOA is in there, anywhere from 20 to 30.
Right.
And you could say, I need to remove this, how much does it cost, where do I need to treat it?
Yeah. And the NSF, they do not, from my understanding, they do not certify any of these filters, right? Because it's still basically in an investigating stage.
No, I think they do certify.
I mean, like, you won't see an NSF seal on any of the product, to my understanding. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
That I'm not sure of, sir.
Okay.
I mean, we could look into that, but from what I know, I believe when NSF puts it on there, it's certified.
The manufacturers have to pay for an NSF certification. It's not cheap, so a lot of manufacturers don't want to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Was that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. One of the other questions is, we're supposed to be respectful and courteous. That is the idea behind this evening. We've shared our information. One of the things, one of the other questions, thank you for voicing your opinion. All right, one of the other questions are, there are many notification tiers. What's the difference, and how many tiers are there? Go ahead. Go ahead, Dave, take the question, please.
Okay, there are 3 different tiers of notification. And the tier 1 was the acute, so that's immediate health effects. You had the tier 2, which is a long-term health effect, and the tier 3, which is more technical. You didn't meet a requirement, you didn't sample when you were supposed to, that type of thing. And that notification for tier 3 is, you don't have to notify, I guess, like 6 months to a year. Because it's less health risk as you go up in the tier.
So first is acute, second is you've got 30 days.
Chronic, yeah.
And third is you've got a long time to notify people.
Right, so doesn't affect your health as much as the first 2.
It could be more of a reporting type of thing.
I just want to make one comment. I know a number of people have raised the question as to whether or not the company will pay for filters, whether the company will provide bottled water. If this were truly a health emergency where that water was unusable and unsafe, we would do whatever we need to do to keep our customers safe, which would include providing filters, it would include providing bottled water, but this is not a health emergency. This is a notification, sir, please, this is a notification requirement as required by New Jersey DEP. We've complied with the regulation in terms of the letter that was sent, and we're now giving you the company's perspective to the extent that this is not a health emergency. If it were, we would do whatever it takes to keep everyone safe. Sir.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming tonight. I may be a little rare amongst the attendees. I'll offer a little bit of kudos and also some criticism and ask some questions. I think first, as a room full of New Jerseyans, we've all borne a brunt of jokes about the environmental quality in the state, right? We've made a lot of the dyes, we made a lot of the paints, we made a lot of the lead, and a lot of us have lost family members doing that and living with the legacy of that. So I think the state took a very positive step of making this regulation. I know that's put you guys in a bad place. That notification is very scary. People are really scared and wondering what to do today. And you guys are coping with the phase-in, of this new standard, which I think is good. A lot of states don't recognize this issue yet. The federal government doesn't recognize this issue yet. We're dealing with it now, okay? So one question about the history of the data. So you guys mentioned you've been gathering the data since 2008. Will you release that data? I know some of the historical quality reports have been posted, and I appreciate that. And I've watched that number for years, actually. Is the older data available as well?
It is available.
It is. It is available on our website under water quality.
Okay.
Every data sheet from 2008 onward through the current. Our current report is up there, and the prior years are up there.
Okay.
Please, ma'am. I'm sorry.
It's there.
So my question, which maybe people see me driving towards, is knowing what we've all discussed about the nature of these materials in the environment. They don't break down. They're forever chemicals. I'll use a little bit of a loaded metaphor, so please, accept this for me. Let's try to deal with it. It's like a snowstorm where the snow doesn't melt, okay? The materials are joining the environment. They don't break down, okay? So I think many people here, they're professionals. I'm not a professional in this environment, but I think critically about this. Violations are inevitable. Okay, I think anybody, and I imagine there might be trend data that's probably going to tell you this if you look back to it. It's eventually going to get above where it's acceptable. Unfortunately, that bar was set lower than a lot of people were probably expecting, and we're dealing with that now, okay? 3 years, it's a major capital project to set up this filtering, and people are wondering what to do in between. Are there things we can do? And I imagine inside your system, you have other plants where you're going to be thinking about this problem. And is there a way to be more proactive about starting this work, knowing that we are going to reach that place where we go over the 14 parts per trillion in those locations?
As I indicated earlier, we began engineering several years ago in anticipation of a higher regulation. What we were expecting, and Bob was in constant contact with DEP, was that this would be an administrative consent order. An administrative consent order basically says, we see that you're in violation, we know you have a plan to remediate it, but it's not something that requires public notification, therefore execute your plan, get it in place, and get into compliance. The New Jersey DEP, and this is public information, concluded relatively recently, we're not going to issue administrative consent orders to any system in New Jersey. We're going to put every system in violation of the MCL. It kind of took us by surprise, frankly. So we were not expecting that we would be in this position where all of a sudden we now have to send out this, frankly, scary letter to our customers with relatively little advance warning about it. But we were assuming all along it was going to be an administrative consent order. So we are where we are. We're trying to share all the information we can. And we have a plan, and it's a good plan. It's going to completely, not completely, but it will remove the substance below the maximum contaminant level, and then we move on from there. But that's the best we can do under these circumstances.
I understand. There's definitely a learning lesson here, I think, for other utilities and municipalities in the state. This same scenario will play out in other places, you know, when those letters go out.
It is playing out in other towns across the state.
Yes. So today, people are in the donut. You know, we know there's a fix on the way, and people are worried. Okay, so thank you for coming. I understand that. You said the target remediation for the new system you're building is you're trying to maintain non-detect, or, I mean, obviously 14 is the requirement.
The system is designed to be half the MCL, which would be 7.
Okay.
Okay, but most of the time, it's going to be non-detect.
All right. Thank
So
you.
that would be the worst case.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more from the cards?
Yeah. This one, based on, is this required in seller property disclosure? For example, will a home seller be likely required to disclose this elevated level when selling their home?
Well, that would be a matter of state law. I'm not aware, I don't believe we're aware, that there is any law in effect or plan to be in effect that would require that disclosure of a homeowner. Dave, I don't know if you have any more than that?
I think the only place that would apply is that if you have a private well, I think that this is part of the Private Well Testing Act. So if you have your own private well, you'd have to test for this on a sale. But as far as from the water you're receiving now from a water company, I'm not aware of that being required.
Okay.
Can I just, yeah. Mhm.
Right. Right.
Okay, well, I can't read it now. But the consumer confidence reports that we issue every year have all the data that's available as to what's in the water. So it is made available to the public. I'm not familiar with that provision. I will certainly read it. Thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah. We'll look into that one.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. Okay, thank you, ma'am. We will take a closer look.
Correct. So that was one of my questions, first and foremost. My name is Stacy. I've lived in this area since I'm 5 years old. I am raising my children here. I bought my first home here 2 years ago. And I now have the potential luxury of moving out of state because of my job allowing me to be remote. One of the questions I have, so I would personally appreciate some sort of communication back from Middlesex Water Company on how that does impact my resale value, my taxes in this township, and my bill from you all, because you are providing me with, by your own admission, contaminated water, right? And I get it that there's no federal regulations. We all know that a lot of times the states make laws first, and then the federal government makes decisions based on the information provided along those. So it's highly likely that 70 will lower, correct? What is Middlesex Water Company doing to lobby against the people that are polluting the water by your admission, because you're going against them for litigation for the cost of what changes you have to make? What are you going to do as a company to remediate these issues with other businesses that are dumping and polluting water for people like myself and my 2 children?
Any business in the state of New Jersey is subject to the regulations of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. That's the agency who oversees who is putting what in the ground, whether it be in the water, the drinking water, the rivers, the streams, the landfills. New Jersey DEP has sole responsibility for ensuring
I understand
quality.
that, but big organizations, when band together, are able to make a lot of change. So what are you doing as a water company to lobby for stricter regulations so these kinds of things don't happen, and you all do not have to be reactive and can be proactive?
Well, what I can tell you, we are actively involved with the American Water Works Association on a national level, as well as the state chapter of the National Association. I personally have been on the board of directors of the Water Research Foundation, which is headquartered in Denver. So there's a lot of research occurring on a national basis. Individual companies like ours don't have the resources to be able to build a significant lobby effort to make improvements. It's through the National Association and the state associations, which we are active members, and everybody on this panel here are actively involved. That's where we're undertaking those lobbying efforts.
Okay. So again, please, on behalf of myself and everybody else in this room, communication is really key. I didn't get a letter. I did not get a letter. And I do get all of those COVID calls, but not a single call on the water issue. So as a parent, as a mother, as a longtime resident, please do a better job of communicating. I'm not on social media. I may be a rarity, but realistically speaking, my information from someone like you all should not be coming from social media.
Well, we did send out 29,000 letters. I don't know why you didn't receive one. I'm sure there's a reason.
A lot of people didn't.
Is your address within the region?
Absolutely. There's actually someone here that's not in this region but got a letter, but I didn't.
Can I talk with you afterward? I just want to make sure that you're on our data list, because we have receipts of what was mailed, when it was mailed, and every single name on the list.
I went on and looked at your presentation before I came, so I would appreciate that. I will stay behind to meet with you.
Yeah, I just want to double check, because
we'll check it.
we go through that data list, we can pinpoint exactly who's on that list. So, and frankly, we've heard from some people that they got it, but they really weren't sure what it was, so they really didn't pay attention to it. So it's something, I'm not saying that happened to you, but that could have happened. So,
thank you.
But thanks.
Okay, ma'am.
My name is Carol Miller. I have been a proud resident of Colonia for the past 22 years. Before I have my questions, my first question is, what town do each of you live in, if I'm allowed to ask that?
I don't live within the service territory.
You do.
I don't. I do not.
I do not.
Not that I drink water every day.
Okay, so in Newark, a couple years ago, high lead levels. What tier violation was the lead level in Newark?
I believe that's a tier 2.
Newark gave water filtration systems and cases of bottled water to their residents. Why not here? If that's a tier 2 in Newark, high lead levels, this is a tier 2 PFAS. How come we're not receiving the same treatment? Thank you.
We don't know what the thought process was by the city of Newark to make that decision. All I can tell you is what we've concluded as a company, based upon the fact that we believe at the level PFOA is in the water. It is not a health emergency. It is not an immediate concern. We've shared all kinds of data as to why we believe that. That's the basis on which we concluded that we are not providing filters.
So high lead levels.
I can't speak to the lead.
Right, it's the same tier is what I'm trying to get. I'm a teacher in one of those schools in Essex County. I see the results of high lead levels of in my students. It's agonizing for me, for their families, for themselves, that high lead level. But okay, that's different. 36 parts per trillion was the third quarter. Can you tell me how, do you take a sample on one day and it's 36 parts per trillion on that one day in that third quarter? How do we get 36?
Yes, it is one sample per quarter at what I said, the point of entry. So this is a well field. So all the wells come into a main area and it gets pumped out through one pipe.
So somewhere between July, August, and September, one sample was taken and it was 36.
Correct.
So it's possible if we took it on a different day, it would have been 56.
Well, we've taken it numerous times in different quarters. And
Correct.
we've also sampled the individual wells. And it looks like since 2008. So we got a pretty good idea that it's going to be in the mid-20s. It doesn't go, some of the wells may be a little higher, some a little lower, depending on which combination of wells we use at the time of sampling. That's why once you find it in your water at the point of entry, and if you have a number of sources, like a number of wells, you say, well, was it coming from one well? See, if it came all from one well, that would have been great. We just shut off that well and everything would be fine. But apparently the whole well field is contaminated.
Could we figure out which well field came from 36? Because Some quarters were, sorry, I forgot my numbers. The first quarter was 25. The second quarter was 23. The third quarter was 36. So can we figure out where that 36 came from, which well field, and shut those off?
Believe it or not, groundwater, it moves like a river and streams do. It moves underground. So, and different, like one of the gentlemen had mentioned about rainfall and things like that. So more rain changes how the groundwater moves. Less rain changes how the ground. We know less rain, we'll see the levels in the wells actually drop. So it's hard to predict. We don't actually know. We don't actually know where the pollution or the PFOAs are coming from. We know it's 3M based on they refer to it almost like a fingerprint. Because 3M, yes, they made it. They put their mark on it. Basically, it's like a fingerprint. So that's how we know to go out. 3M. But who dumped it, where they dumped it, that we don't have any idea. No one does.
My last question: we all know that construction delays. We're saying mid-23 for this new plant. How can we guarantee it will be mid-23 and not into mid-24 or mid-25 because construction delays?
All I can tell you is that our engineering department, and we use contractors, construction crews to build facilities. All I can tell you is we have project plans. We hold our own people and our contractors accountable for being on time, being on budget with the appropriate quality. So it's all about how we manage all of the different resources that are responsible for the project. So we know this is something that's of concern to everyone, and we are laser focused on the middle of 2023. If we can get it done quicker, we absolutely will. But as you might expect with the continued hangover from COVID, supply chain issues are a bit of a challenge. We're struggling as a company to get parts for things. We've struggled at times to get certain chemicals. But we're doing the best we can to keep that project on track.
Thank you.
Why don't we just stay with the people in the audience?
Yeah.
Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Angela Sealski. I'm from Metuchen, and I am in the affected area. I did receive your letter. I almost didn't open it because it looked like one of the water line insurance letters. I wish it was in like an orange envelope. And I promptly shared it to multiple online forums to spread the word. I've heard many of your answers, been taking notes, I'll share them, but I could not leave here without saying one thing, which is I hear you on the fact that you don't want to cover the cost of filters, filtration, bottled water. My only thing is this is a very large, economically diverse area that is affected. I can say I have the privilege, and I will use that word, of being able to go out and buy potentially, I don't even know how much it's going to cost me, a $300 system because I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm not willing to take any chances, okay? I am concerned about the folks that could not be here because they're working a night shift, about the low-income families in this area, seniors. I don't know why I'm echoing. And I just want to call out that you hear, there is a rational thread through this whole discussion. We know that you did not put the chemicals in the water, but we do rely on you for what we perceive as safe drinking water. My only public concern here to you is the economic disparity. I have the privilege to afford a filter. A senior citizen may not. A family who is struggling may not. And certainly after COVID, people are not doing okay.
The only thing I can say, which I've said several times, is if this were truly a health emergency, an acute threat, and it posed an immediate health risk, we would pay for filters, we would pay for bottled water, we would do whatever it takes to keep our customers safe. But at the levels we're talking about, we do not believe this is an immediate health risk. Plain and simple.
I hear you, and I just point out the privilege that many of the people have gone running out to buy over-the-counter filters and under-the-counter filters, and once again, I'm pointing out those that cannot afford that to do it, that's all.
It's our belief they don't need to be doing that.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
Hi. Okay. I appreciate that you're here today, and I'm happy that the DEP set new regulations for a lower PFAS, because otherwise we wouldn't be here, and we would be continuing to drink our water at like 40 ppt. You know, so this is a good thing that we're here and regulations were set and that we're making changes. Does Middlesex Water ever make changes on their own without regulations? Because we all know that OAs and OS and PFAS have been in our water for years. You know, DuPont and 3M and all them, the chemical companies making these products, it's been spilling in our water for a long time. And you know that. Do you only make changes based on regulations from the DEP and the EPA, or does the water company take any initiative to lower like the PPT on their own?
You'll see in many of our public documents, we have a long history of claiming that we meet or exceed federal and state standards. Dave is the guy who knows the chemistry. He's the guy that's responsible for treatment. He will tell you the same thing. We meet or exceed the standards in a number of ways, and there are a number of things that we have to test for in the water, and which are regulated. We also have a capital program, a large capital program we call Water for Tomorrow, which we initiated several years ago, which is planning for the future. I continue to say publicly that the benefits that our customers enjoy today for having safe, reliable water was all based upon the planning and the foresight of the people who came before us 50 years ago. The planning we're doing today is to not only keep our customers safe for today, but also for the next generation, for the next 50 years. So we're building infrastructure, we're building pipelines, we're building treatment capability. It's not just about today, it's about the future. So Dave, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but he's the water guy.
Well, you know, we monitor if there's a contaminant that looks like it might be regulated or it might have a health issue, we monitor it to see where we are. The problem is you don't know what the level is, a health level, because we're not health professionals. So somebody else determines what that is. We can follow the science and see what the treatments are going to be so that we're more prepared to do that.
Excuse me. A lot of scientists are saying that no level of PPT is good to be in your water, or in your food, or in the fish that you eat, or your plants, or anything. I mean, nobody wants this this forever chemical in their bodies because you can't get rid of it. It might take 4 years, 10 years, whatever, for it to come out of your body, or it may never come out of your body. And I respect the fact that, you know, this, say, 13, 14 PPTs per trillion is such a minute amount, and so it might, you know, we might believe that it's safe, but you really don't know. You really don't know, because you're saying scientists are still discovering it, right? They're still figuring it out. So, look, I'm happy that something's being done, because like I said, if the administration didn't do anything and the DEP didn't set bigger standards, then we wouldn't even be here. So this is a good thing. I know people don't realize that, because this is a countrywide problem. This is big. It's much bigger than New Jersey, much bigger than Colonia. It's a really big problem. But you know, the EPA has set a 70 PPT, which is to me like horrible compared to the DEP's 40 PPT. No, 13 or 14, right? That they want to set. So when you do finally put the facility in place, my husband did have the question. I think that one guy asked it, right? But when you do have the facility in place, what are the PPTs going to go down to? Are they going to go down close to zero? Are we going to get there? You know.
As I said earlier, the facility is designed to meet half the MCL, which would be 7, but most of the time it's going to be non-detect. I mean, it's below the level that they can measure. Nothing's ever zero,
right.
But the instruments can measure to a certain level reliably, so it should be below that most of the time. But it will never be over half the MCL.
Okay. And also, after we deal with PFOAs and PFOS and PFAS and all that, we know that there's going to be another chemical in place that DuPont and 3M are doing. It's called whatever, HCR, and the other ones that are coming right behind them that are going to end up in our drinking water. Are we looking at that to say, let's make sure that we have the filtration system to try to get some of that out, because these companies, they don't give a shit about us. I don't blame you guys. You guys are actually trying to follow what the DEP is saying, okay? You're trying to clean the water. You're drinking it, and you could look at a statewide map, okay? And you could click on the little dots and see that, oh, my neighbor, who's maybe 2 points under me, they didn't get a notice yet, but they're drinking the same thing I am. So their water company is going to have to deal with it sooner or later as well. So at least we're being proactive here. Something is happening, but I'm just wondering, what are we going to do? Keep doing, to beat these companies that keep pouring the chemicals into our water,
Dennis?
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, all right. So the EPA has what they call the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule. Okay, we mentioned that earlier. That's how we knew it was in there. So every 5 years, the EPA determines which chemicals that everybody across the country should sample for that have potential for health effects. So then they get the information back and they can decide whether or not to regulate, depending on the levels, how much health effects are associated with it, and can you measure it, can you treat it? Because if you can't treat it, you can't set a level for something that you can't remove to. That wouldn't help. So, as technology improves and we find out which chemicals are the ones that are problems, because some of them, just because they're in your water doesn't mean they're a health problem. So you could have calcium in your water.
Right.
That's not a health problem.
We know that.
Right.
We know that,
See, but there's other chemicals. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of chemicals out there. So it's like, where do you start? So that's where the EPA, as part of the Safe Drinking Water Act, says, okay, we're going to take a chunk of these compounds that are new and that might have health effects based on the way they are compared to other chemicals that may cause similar problems, and then look at those and see how widespread it is and at what levels to make that determination. So there's another, what they call UCMR, coming up. Is it next year? I think next year. And so they're going to look at a whole new bunch of chemicals out there that could be regulated.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. And just so everybody knows, water filtration systems are like $3,000. They're not $300.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just one of the things I also wanted to mention is, we make our annual water quality report available to everyone on our website. It's up there, it's there every year for you to review and take a look at everything that we test and monitor for. So we encourage everyone, as Dennis mentioned earlier, it's not really exciting reading, but it's required language that we have to use in there. But getting to know your drinking water is just part of something that we encourage everyone to do. Learn about what we're doing and what we're testing for. So,
Sir?
Hi, how you doing? First thing, if you're going to get up there and say that we believe that the drinking water is good on your slideshow here, and then follow up and saying that the science isn't in yet, you might not want to do that, because you're confusing everyone. You're saying that it's okay, but you're saying that the data is not there.
Just qualify that a bit. The regulation tells us what we have to say.
I understand
It's
that.
our professional opinion that at that level in the regulation, even above the regulation, the water is safe. So we're trying to be transparent. We don't want to come out here and tell you the water is not safe if it really is, and vice versa.
Okay.
We're trying to be as honest as we can. And if you see inconsistencies in our messages, by all means point it out to us, and we'll straighten it out.
I just feel like you're kind of counter. You're saying one thing, and then you're saying that the science isn't there. They're still studying it. They don't really know what this stuff does.
That's not us saying it. That's the scientific population that's saying that.
Right.
The word is still out in terms of research. So it's not us saying that. the research community has still, that's why the EPA hasn't set a standard for it. So-
Yeah, so I understand that, but you're telling us that the water's safe, and there's no data for that. You're saying that there's no data that the water is safe.
All we can rely on is the basis on which New Jersey DEP established the maximum contaminant level, which is if you drink 64 ounces a day for 70 years, you have a 1 in a million chance of contracting cancer. That's New Jersey DEP's guideline.
I understand.
I mean, you have to reach your own conclusion as to whether or not you believe at that level it's safe or not.
Right.
And last year, the same water was safe
And now it's not.
at the health level of 40. But all of a sudden, this year, it's not.
This is very confusing to everyone.
I know, and listen, we
This is
share
very
your
confusing.
frustration.
Yeah.
You know, you may not realize we're stuck in the middle. Regulators generally take a very conservative view. They generally tell the story that is the most conservative with complete protection. The company, on the other hand, who runs the business every day, is trying to get information to the customers that is, I'll call it, more transparent, more informative, more fact-based.
Okay.
We're stuck in the middle, so we're trying to make sure we balance the need to comply with the notification requirements and the regulation against giving our customers comfort that based on our professional opinion, the water is safe for all your normal household uses and will continue to be safe.
All right, well, I'm still going to get my filtration system, and
Those are
I'm still going to
personal
try to get it
decisions.
as low as I possibly can.
That's a
Now,
very personal decision.
I know that you're not scientists, okay? But do you know how long this stuff stays in our body? Always?
The fact that it's characterized as a forever chemical, it
Okay.
does not break down.
Right, so it's in our bodies forever.
It's in our bodies from clothing, from Scotchgard, from Teflon, from popcorn bags, from packaged foods.
Okay, so
it's
if
in
we-
our bodies in many forms, from
Okay,
many forms.
so if we were consuming this water and we were getting, 24, 41 parts per trillion a day drinking this stuff, so we can have that much stuck in our bodies, is what
The
you're
only
saying.
thing I can suggest, if you're uncomfortable, speak with your health professional.
professionals,
There
yeah.
are ways to test the level of these substances in your bloodstream.
Okay.
I mean, if you were to find it, and, correct me if you guys think I'm wrong, some of the national stories one gentleman raised earlier about what was going on in
Yeah, I
Vermont.
know that
They
story,
were
yeah.
testing people's blood and
Right.
finding levels that were through the roof.
Right.
If it's through the roof in any of our customers' bodies, it's not from the drinking water. It's from other substances. But I would really be, I would not be able to believe that anyone in our customer base has significantly high levels of PFOA in their bodies, certainly not from the drinking water.
Okay, so, but we can, if we do go get tested in our blood, and we can definitely see if it's from 3M, though.
I don't, you'd have to
Yes?
discuss it. I'm sorry?
You're saying it's from 3M, right?
It's our claim that it's 3M. As Bob
Okay.
indicated, there's a
marker.
There's a marker.
Okay.
We
All
are
right.
in court. We've been in depositions. We are well along our way in the U.S. District Court, and we're hoping for a favorable outcome.
Great. Okay, for those people who came up here and had problems with their blood and everything, maybe they should go get it tested. And then you can sue 3M.
Yes, sir.
So you're suing 3M in an attempt to recoup some of your costs for this new construction.
We're attempting to recoup all of our costs.
So we, as end consumers, we have now the right to sue you?
Anyone can file a suit for any reason, whether or not you've been harmed
So
and
we
you've
can recover
experienced
our
damages.
costs? Because we're all talking about thousands of dollars for filter systems.
This is a legal question, sir. I'm not qualified to answer that question. If you consult an attorney, they can tell you what your remedies are, what your damages may be, what you've suffered as a result of this issue. But I can't answer that question for you.
It was just something that I wanted to put out there.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the first advisories from the EPA were issued back in the late 90s. And this is it came to their attention in the 70s. They finally started to do advisories in the late 90s. Nothing's been on the board until now. You're a proactive company, or you claim to be. Why are we just finding about this now? Because why? Because somebody put it in a regulation and you are now responsible?
As we indicated earlier, we've been monitoring PFOA in the water system since 2008, and we've been reporting the results of those tests every year since 2008. We've been well below there's no federal regulation. We've been well below the health guidance levels all that time since we started monitoring in 2008. It's only an issue once the regulation changes, and now we have to meet a different standard. And now it truly is a regulation. It's not a health advisory or a guideline.
You've also mentioned the word acute on numerous times. If this has been ongoing since the 90s, you've been testing since 2000, or publishing, I should say, since 2008. Doesn't that make it now chronic?
We've been in compliance with the regulations since 2008, since monitoring began.
So in other words, this is the cover your butt situation.
No, not at all. We've been in compliance with the regulation as we are with every other regulation we're required to abide by.
Well, there was no regulation.
There was no regulation.
We were in compliance with the health advisory level that the EPA had established.
And it was an advisory level. It was not a regulation.
It's not a rule. It's not a regulation.
Now that there is a regulation and you are in violation,
now,
is there a fine that goes along with that?
We hope not.
I would certainly hope
Could
not
be.
either, because at least you're taking some sort of action.
Yeah.
We've been in design of the new plant since 2019. It's a $47 million project. We expect to be able to remediate the PFOA below the maximum contaminant level, but it's a very large and complex project. And as Dave described, the carbon and everything that goes along with it, it's very complex, and that's why it takes time.
I appreciate that you're actually trying to do something. And not just sit back.
We started several years before the regulation became effective because we saw that it was going to be coming. There are other utilities across New Jersey, many municipal systems, who are now only getting started, and they're in the same position that we are relative to a violation. That doesn't help any of you, give you any level of comfort, but we try to be proactive and we plan ahead. As I said, we're planning for the next 50 years, at least the next 50 years.
But as you said, mentioned, it's in Teflon, it's in Scotchgard, and all these things, they have to be cumulative, no? Even our water, cumulative, no? It's a forever chemical.
All I can tell you is we've identified who we believe is the polluter, and we're doing what we can to get satisfaction for our customers. Because every dollar that we're able to recoup will not go to the company, it will go to our customers in the form of mitigating any rate impacts in the future. And we're not required to file that lawsuit, but we took it upon ourselves to do it because we believe it's the right thing to do for our customers.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming and answering questions. My name is Mike Nolan, and I live here in Colonia. A few years ago, I looked up on a website to see where your water comes from, and it said that it was coming from that place on the Delaware and Raritan Canal, which is now labeled as American Water. I don't know if that changed hands, that treatment plant, and now or it used to be Middlesex Water, or I'm not sure really what it was. But Mike, when I got this letter, that was the first I found out that the water was coming from the well field on Park Avenue in South Plainfield. And I want to know if I'm correct in knowing that there is a Superfund site about 1.5 miles southwest of there by Kentile Road.
I don't know the answer to that. Anyone else familiar with it?
I believe it's the Cornell Dubilier site, and I don't think the pollution is coming from there. It's a Superfund site for another chemical, a different chemical.
Okay, but that wellfield site, how long has that been there? I mean, on Park Avenue, where you're pumping water from, how long has that been in operation?
In the 50s, I think.
Huh?
More.
Well, we have steam out there, so, I mean, I would
A long
say,
time.
I would say, yeah, probably early 1900s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been there a long time.
All right. Well, I'm just, when I found out that where that wellfield site is, 1.5 miles from there was a huge Superfund cleanup site at that site, that company name that you just mentioned, Corp, whatever it was. And they're still playing around with it over there. They're not quite done with it. And there is marshy waterways that lead from that site to where your well field is. So I don't think it's really a good idea to have a well field pumping water out of the ground in that close proximity to a Superfund site.
Yeah, but when the wells were put in, we didn't know that there was contamination there. That's,
well,
if we known,
maybe,
now we might have put it somewhere else if we had the property.
Maybe the well field site was put in before it became known that it was a Superfund site.
We've actually, I remember this happened not a couple years ago, it's probably 15 to 20 years ago. We were approached by an attorney who was trying to put together, I guess we call it a class action suit. I'm not an attorney, so I may not be using the correct language. And they wanted us to get on board with this Cornell Dublier site. And one, we didn't have whatever the contaminants weren't in our wells. And remember what I was saying before about how groundwater moves in a certain direction? The groundwater was not moving from that site to in our direction. It was moving away.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my only question then. And thank you again for coming tonight.
You're welcome. All right, thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Jama, and somebody made a comment earlier about depending on where you live relative to where these wells are, you may be closer to the number or you may be farther from that number. Where are those wells relative to the map?
So the well field, if you look at the the very top left corner
Oh, way over here.
on that map,
Okay.
yes, top left is where the well field is.
Okay. And my next question is, when did your lawsuit against 3M start?
A couple of years ago. I think it
So
was-
if you felt that 3M a couple of years ago had contaminated the water or was the culprit of contaminating the water, why have we waited until a couple of years later? And I understand that I don't want to say hide behind or stand behind that no regulation, but why do you guys wait so long to say, oh, we have a problem?
Well, we've been monitoring since 2008, and we were anticipating that New Jersey DEP, and possibly even US EPA, which they have not, would implement a more stringent maximum contaminant level. We suspected that the level would be something below what we might be able to treat at with our current facility. That's when we started to do more research into why we had the level that we did, and that's when we learned that we claim is now 3M. When we learned that, we hired people to do that investigation for us. When we learned that, we immediately initiated the lawsuit, and we immediately began doing the design and the engineering associated with new treatment facilities, not knowing whether or not the problem would get worse or it would get better, but knowing for sure in our belief that the regulation was going to get more stringent. So we did stay ahead of it. We stayed ahead of it by several years.
And also, the monitoring was within the health advisory level of 40 points per trillion. So we were within that guideline at the time.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but as a company or who oversees something that many individuals are going to be affected by, right? Because there's a lot of people in that little area. Why aren't you ahead of the game? So in other words, Yes, there will be regulations, guidelines, whatever the case may be. I'm gonna give you a prime example. My husband he's a building manager in New York City. They're getting ready to put a chiller in place. He did some investigations and he said this kind of refrigerant is going to be eliminated by the government. The company that they had consulted with said, no, it's not. Don't worry about it. We can always retrofit it later. My husband kept insisting. While the negotiations are going on to replace this chiller, the government puts out a bulletin, this will be eliminated by X year. He was ahead of it, right? He didn't wait for the government to say it's going to happen. He knew that was going to happen at some point. So he was ahead of it because it mattered to him, because he's going to have to report to the stakeholders. The stakeholders are us. So shouldn't you be a little bit ahead of the game? Not just wait for somebody to tell you you have to be below this number?
I guess the answer to that would be, at what point should we have determined that we should have spent $47 million to build a plant for something that is not yet a regulation? And if it becomes a regulation, at what level would the regulation be set? The first indication we saw that there could be a challenge was the state of California. California was the first state in the country to go to a level of 14 parts per trillion. And many of us in the industry looked at that and said, this is absolutely nuts. The scientists that I network with at the American Water Works Association and the Water Research Foundation, even they were saying, this is nuts. Yet it got enacted. And then other states look at that and they say, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but I can tell you that no one wants to be known as the outlier with respect to public health. So various states have gotten on board and passed similar regulations. So when we learned in New Jersey the level was going to be around that level, we accelerated our process and knew that we had to get that plant going even quicker. But no one knew what the level was going to be. And that's only relatively recently that was learned.
So how far behind are you because of COVID to get to that 2023 date?
We don't know the answer to that. I mean, we have supply chain issues every day.
But you do know, because I can tell you right now that my husband's project is delayed because of COVID, and he knows exactly when they're going to be at X point. So if you had, for argument's sake, a June 2023 date, how far out are you now?
We broke ground 2 months ago, and we're well into construction. We meet on a regular, but monthly, we have project, I mean, there's weekly stuff going on, but we get together once a month as a group, and all the stakeholders are there, and we're making sure that we're hitting our milestones. Right now, we're not hearing from our contractor that there's any concerns with the material, and they're on it, they're watching it as well, but we're not.
What's the date? So 2020, you said mid-2023?
Yes, we're saying
Is that where
July
you
1.
started?
We're saying July 1, 2023 is when that plant will be up and running and functional. That's our target date.
And that was the original date, July 2023?
Yes.
And that has
Yes.
not changed even with COVID to make it December 2023?
No, we're fortunate. We have actually, it was a bidding process. We actually got the same contractor who just finished an ozone treatment expansion at our surface water plant. We were fortunate enough to get them. They were the low bidder, and they're doing the carbon treatment system for us. So we've got those relationships with them. They actually picked up one job and went right to the other and started working on it. And again, we're speaking today on the 25th of. I don't know what it's going to be a week from now, 2 weeks from now. We could see those issues. From what I'm hearing too, it's not so much the material and the supplies; it's truck drivers.
Right.
We can't get truck drivers to drive the stuff around.
Right, that's a ripple effect. Now, just some food for thought. I know a lot of people were concerned about the filters in the water and what have you. Have you guys thought of partnering with one of the filtration companies to say, they can, if we get X number of individuals who are willing to buy a filter, they would give us a break, for argument's sake. Have you thought about that? Has that been explored?
We won't acknowledge that there's a health threat. We believe the water is safe, and we believe there is no reason to install filters. That's a personal decision by any homeowner, any consumer, if you choose to do that.
No, I understand where you're coming from, because that's, again, if you want to, if I'm being blunt, hiding behind the regulations. What I'm saying is, if you want to be proactive and your population that's here that are drinking your water and paying your bills and keeping you in office, right? Because we basically pay your salaries. So if that's the case and they're all saying filters, right? Why can't you partner with somebody, whoever these people are that make the filters, and maybe help everybody break?
Because we don't believe there's a need for filters. Simple as that. The water is safe.
So you're just going to hide behind that part?
I'm not hiding. The water is safe.
But yet you choose to not partner on a class action suit and go after 3M. I'm not saying they're not guilty.
We're doing that for the customer.
I'm sure they're guilty.
We're doing that for the customer. Every
Right.
dollar we may recover is going to go to the customer.
Right, so you're doing that for the customer. So think about the customers again. I'm not telling you to provide filters for everybody. I'm just saying, how about you talk to a company who may be able to provide filters at a discounted cost to your customers. That's all I'm saying.
We will take that under consideration.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Hi, I'm a Colonia resident, and I have a question about this system. I mean, there was a good point lady brought. If you have no health issue, what's the reason you're suing the 3M? If they didn't cause any problems.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Now, my question is, if there's no health hazard, that means 3M is not guilty. So why is suing them for?
Well, because of the fact that we have to build a plant to remediate to a maximum contaminant level where we know they were the cause of the substance in the first place. So we believe they have liability, and that's why we're suing.
The lawsuit was brought after we found out we had to put in a plant, so we didn't sue them before then.
Okay. All right, I just want a clarification on how the system works. I'm Colonia resident. I was told that we get the water from North Creek Springs, at North Edison Creek. So, for example, you're saying that all this water mixes all together. That we have a well water and we have a surface water from Delaware Canal, from Raritan Canal. So how does it work? So you're building the plant that's going to treat all the water, that's going to come together, it's going to be mixed together, and it's going to be one plant for all the water?
Take that, Dave?
No, they're different plants, so we're only building the PFOA removal plant for the one source, which is the well field, that has the problem. The other sources we have don't have the same problem with the PFOA or any of the PFAS chemicals, so we don't need to treat there. We're just going to treat the well field where they come in. So if that's low and all our other sources are low, then everybody in the middle where it mixes will be low.
So if so that water mixes afterwards mixes
Yes.
together?
Yes.
So for example, how do we know if we're in Colonia, which water we're getting exactly? Or these mixes together, so it'd be all the same?
Because we have a hydraulic model that'll calculate based on flows and demands where the water goes, okay? And we also sample, we have 50 sample sites within our area, so we take 150 samples a month, and we look at different water quality parameters. So we can see by that as well, chlorine residuals, calcium hardness, alkalinity. There's a number of ways we can determine where that goes. That's how we can confirm that the hydraulic model is giving us the right data, so that we're sure that those areas that we have highlighted and the customers we sent notices to are the ones that are going to be receiving some of that water. So not everybody receives the same amount, especially where you have the interface of where the two water qualities meet. So that may move back and forth a little bit, and you get a little bit of mixing. So that's where that happens. But as you get closer to the source of where the PFOA is coming from, that's where you get the highest concentration, which is the numbers that we showed you on the notice.
The two plants aren't together. So as we said before, the well field, the well water is in the top left-hand corner of the map. That map, actually, our distribution system extends down below where it cuts off, and our surface water plant is at the bottom left corner. So you got one up here, and you have one down here, and they both push the water into the system this way.
Okay, and then it's being drawn to each individual house from that point? I mean, the pipes goes to all the houses from that point where the mix is all together?
Well, it doesn't like come to one place, mix, and then go out to the whole system. It's going out to the, I mean, there's people who live just outside the door or outside the gate of the well field, and there's people who live just outside the gate at the surface plant. And obviously, if you live just outside the gate of the well field, you're getting all well water. If you live just outside the door or the gate of the surface water plant, you're getting all surface water. So everyone in between is getting a mix and a blend, depending on how much water we're putting in from each plant every day. It changes every day.
All right, thank you.
And that can change based on needs and demands throughout the entire system. We have over 740 miles in our system, so we're constantly, changing levels based on needs out there.
Hi, I'm Diane Legaspi. I'm a resident of Metuchen. My question is, I think you mentioned several times that the plant that's being built will treat the water in, I guess, mid-2023. What exact treatment are you guys doing, if any, to the source of where the contamination is?
Yeah, the treatment we chose was granular activated carbon. So that's the treatment that's going in. So the water goes through the carbon, and the carbon absorbs the PFOA onto the carbon. And then the water that goes through now does not have that.
And is that just for the plant? That's not treatment that you're doing separately now?
No, we're constructing it now. So it takes time to build the plant, because it's designed for the max output of the plant, which can be up to 12 million gallons a day. So it's a pretty big plant. We have to put, was it 40? 40 30-foot tall vessels in to treat this water.
So you're not treating any water right now from the source?
Yeah, we do the normal treatment. We add chlorine to it. We also have air strippers, because there's volatile organics in the water. So we use a technology called air strippers, where you blow air through it and it removes.
But
so
is that a process that you were doing beforehand? There's nothing that's changed since the levels reaching over the 14?
No, that does not change it. That's why you have to pick a specific technology for a specific contaminant.
Yes, are you planning to do anything outside of the plant to actually treat over that 14 as of right now? Or you're just planning on monitoring and testing it? Because my question is, you're just testing it, right? You're just saying that the levels are 14.
No. The plant is being built now.
Yeah, but the plant's being built, but the water's not actually filtering through the water
correct.
now, correct? So you're not treating that 14 level or getting to any of that 14 level until the plant.
We're not treating for PFOA
I just want to
right now.
make sure that that's clear, because then really the treatment's only happening after the plant's being built. You're not actually adjusting any of the levels. You're only monitoring and testing it.
But we are blending the water to the extent we can with surface water.
I think that's important to know, because I think a lot of people with that letter just assumed, okay, the plant is treating it, and then they say, well, no, we're treating it now, but you're not really treating the water until the plant is being built. And then my second question is, I think you mentioned that it gets tested quarterly, or is that testing changing or adjusting it to more frequently now that you know that the levels is above the 14?
Well, per regulation, quarterly is the most frequently you do it, but once we put treatment in, it depends. The state may want us to do it more frequently, but we're gonna make sure that that the water is meeting the regulation once the treatment plant goes in. So we're actually looking to do the analysis in-house instead of sending it out to a lab and waiting. So we're looking to do that as well, so that we can get more real-time
I just want
data back.
So the answer is no, you're not testing it any more than you would without being required to. Correct? You're
Correct.
already doing that.
I mean, we've tested individual wells that we don't have to test, but we've
I just think
That's-
knowing that the New Jersey standard is at 14 and you're above that your processes would actually change to adjust for that, meaning test it more frequently so you know that if the levels are going higher or lower. As a customer, I would love to know if it does go down to 14 or if it goes up to 44, testing it on a weekly basis. I think that should be taken into consideration. More testing, more frequently.
Well, we have testing over several years and the different seasons, so I'm pretty sure we have a good handle on it, and we're looking at the mid-20s. And it shouldn't vary much in between that because we've measured individual wells as well. So we have a pretty good handle on it. That's how we've made a decision on the treatment, depending on what you need to remove, determines what treatment you use.
But you just said your treatment's only the plan, correct? So that's not going to adjust it if the numbers spike higher. You're waiting for that plan to be built.
Correct. The plant we have now cannot remove what's in the PFOA.
How you doing? First of all, I believe most of you are here to help us out. I guess a lot of us that are here probably don't believe a lot of the things that other people say. There's a lot of distrust between companies and people that hear the excuses that they're making. But what I'm going to ask you is, the NJDEP, who funds them?
Taxpayers.
Taxpayers? Do they have if you don't meet your guidelines, how much time are they giving you to go past the date of that plant to be functional?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
How much time will they be giving you? In other words, you could be fined if you don't meet this expectation of 14 parts per trillion, right?
Ultimately, potentially.
So how, that fine, when will it start to go into effect?
We don't know if it will go into effect at all, and if it ever does, we don't know what the amount would be.
You don't know. Okay. Seems like they got up one morning and decided that to change this just arbitrarily. Why are they doing that?
I can't tell you what the thought process was. I have my personal observations, which I won't share publicly.
And I know why.
But I will tell you that we believe that the science supports the fact that the water we're delivering, at the levels we're delivering, are safe for human consumption based on the statistics that we provided. But I can't comment on how DEP reaches their conclusions or why.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's the question that really needs to be answered. Why would they suddenly change this? What's in it for them? There's something wrong here with that. You just don't get up in the morning. What was their basis for changing it? And another thing, who wrote this part that says, to put it in risk perspective, the newly established MCL is based on a 1 in a million chance of becoming ill? Who wrote that?
We believe that that is the metric that DEP used in establishing the level of 14 parts per trillion.
So, the DEP?
That's our understanding.
Okay. I got to commend the DEP for looking after all this, just in this respect, because 1 in a million that you might get ill?
Over 70 years.
Over 70 years. They're really going a little bit overboard. Did anybody say WTF when you got this notification to null over to 14?
We said that in the most respectful manner that we could.
I mean, come on. Second, the problem I have is I'm going to have to go home to my wife and explain something. She's immunocompromised. She has CLC, and there's other things that are going on. So she's looking for that water filter. You have a lawsuit against, who is it?
3M Corporation.
3M. Is there a way that you could piggyback the funding it would take to whoever in this room or is being affected by this to get the money back from them to pay for the water filters or whatever they need to use to make their water safe in their own minds? Because what you're asking here is see your health provider to give us guidance And you also at the same time said, they're probably going to look at you like a deer in the headlights going, I don't know what to tell you. So you're leaving it up to us as individuals to say, what's good for you, right?
What we're attempting to do is share with you what the regulators are telling you is the required notification. And we're also telling you, based upon the science from our experts and all of the resources that we subscribe to across the country, based upon our professional expertise and based upon the metrics that have been established by the regulators, we're trying to give you all the information that's available. But ultimately, it's a personal decision as to whether or not you believe there's a significant health threat here. It's our belief there is not. You'll read the DEP letter. They're not necessarily telling you that it's a significant health threat, but there is required language in there that is very conservative. And you have to make your own judgments as to what you believe that language is telling you.
And with that being said, I understand all of that, but now I have to go home, and I know what I'm going to get. Get the water filter. Do whatever you got to do. That's it. She's going to say that. And I'm going to have to do it. But it's going to come out of my pocket. Why can't it come out of 3M's pocket?
To the extent we're able to get any settlement or litigated outcome from 3M, every dollar that we recover will go to the benefit of our customers in terms of an offset to your rates. That's the only
not going to help me pay for
mechanism.
my water filter, is it?
It won't initially, but it should provide some benefit over the long term in terms of your water bill. And I know that's not, it's not transparent. You don't see that.
What I see is writing a check to get my wife satisfied. Even though I don't feel that way, I know what she's going to tell me. And you know what I'm going to do.
I have my own domestic challenges,
Yeah.
and I feel your pain.
Yeah.
But I can't help you with that one.
I know. But meanwhile, I foot the bill to make her happy because of this letter, because of the company it caused in the first place. So, me, they should be responsible. You should be able to piggyback your lawsuit for anybody here that wants the filters to feel safe because that's what they need to do.
All I can tell you is we are attacking them aggressively.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Joe from South Plainfield. I just want to understand, if I'm in South Plainfield, you said it was 70% canal water and 30% well water. If I'm in South Plainfield in that area, am I getting more of the well water? Am I definitely getting more of the PFAS? Yes.
Yes.
Can I be getting pure? I mean, if I'm right by that well, can I be getting 100%? So then that
Yes.
36, what's the highest it'll be? Is it 36 the
Yeah,
highest?
it can't get any higher than what it's coming out as. It
And
can't-
that's 36 at the
Well,
worst.
that was the last reading.
At the last reading.
So it doesn't always stay, it varies between a certain level. But it averages about the mid-20s.
Okay. Just one question too. Like this water's coming out of the well and combining. I would have thought it went to a central plant and you process it there. But I guess that doesn't happen. So if I'm close to that well, how do you process it? There's a processing plant right by that well that puts in the chlorine and...
Yes, well, all 18 wells go to the central plant, and it's processed and sent out.
What that... Yeah, then why would I get more if I'm right across the street from the well? That's the part I'm not understanding.
No, right across from where the plant enters the distribution, the point of entry. Because each well has water that
Right.
needs to be treated
Right.
for other things before it goes out to the distribution system. Okay, so they all combine it together.
Where
and
do
then
they, just so I understand, where do they all combine together?
At the one plant in South Plainfield, at
Oh.
the left corner there.
Okay, I see.
So all the wells are in this one area, what, 80 acres or something we have up there?
Okay.
And the wells are there, and they pump to the main pumping station for that well field, and it goes into the distribution system.
And again, we may be getting 100% well water, but still, it's the highest that you've recorded recently is 36
Right,
parts per million.
correct.
One other question that I had, really it's not just drinking the water, it's taking a shower in the water too. It's permeating into your skin. You're getting some of that into your system just by touching it, correct?
I do not believe that is true. It's ingestion.
It's ingested. I just want to make sure of
Unless
that.
I'm wrong. Is that
I don't believe that's a major avenue. I don't believe that's a
I mean,
major.
because you're washing clothes, you're doing dishes. I mean, you could put a filter on your drinking water, but are you still getting it on your skin? Are you still getting it through other ways?
Relative to all the other routes of exposure, I don't think that's currently believed to be a major source.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
My issue is, we were dealing with your company, with your engineering. Your engineering told us to decommission our well. We decommissioned our well as instructed. After we decommissioned our well, we were told by your company it would cost $250,000 to get water to my house. It's the turn of the century. My question is, why am I told now, after I decommissioned my well, that I can't use for 2 years now, why I gotta pay $250,000 to a public utility who's gonna spread this $47 million across their ratepayers?
That's an issue which, if I understand you correctly, is unrelated to what we're discussing here this evening?
It's directly related. Your ratepayers pay for this company to survive, okay? The towns pay you $700 for each fire hydrant that they have in their town, which I don't understand. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrant. Why they pay you $700 a year for that, okay? But I have no water because of your engineering department. And not my engineering department. I was told, decommission my well. I paid for it. I get a state well watcher. The town of Woodbridge's health guy to watch the whole thing. And now I have no water for 2 years because of your engineering department.
We'd be happy to take up that issue offline. It's a separate...
Well, speak to Mr. Brian Carr. He's your engineering guy.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Ann McLaughlin. I'm from Edison. My question is more technical, I guess. When you collect this contaminant in your new plant and it gets into this carbon, when the carbon is saturated, what do you do with that carbon?
It gets sent out for incineration. It's burned. And then we get new carbon, and we start the process over again.
And what happens with people like me who might want a system in their house, and I'm going to have this kind of carbon pack or whatever it is? How do I get rid of it?
I'm sure the manufacturer may have some suggestions. I'm not exactly sure how they suggest you do that. I know for ours, it's going to be incinerated.
When it's incinerated, does that contaminant then go into the air, and is it?
No, I believe it's.
Is it a closed incineration?
I believe it is destroyed when it's burned. It gets destroyed.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any other questions from the group?
You said it's okay to wash dishes with this water. I mean, the residue or whatever that's left over on your dry dishes isn't going to get back in your food. It's not going to get back in your system after you eat it or drink it.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling.
Like basically, will the chemical be left like a residue on your dishes for use to be ingested?
I would say it's too low. That's why drink ingestion is the main root of this. Anything else is minor to that.
Right, because it's not going to get in your skin from a shower, so I was just wondering,
right,
since it gets in through ingestion.
It's through ingestion.
So then would it be left over on your dry, like glass or something like that?
It
just wouldn't
there'd
be...
be little or no water on your dishes. So.
Right. All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
You got this lawsuit filed against them. I don't know if you're aware, 3M just sent Tennessee Water Commission for $93 million this week. Let's just say your $47 million plan, somehow you guys get $97 million. You're saying it's going to go back to the people. That lawsuit took 12 to 15 years. 12 to 15 years from now, if you settle with 3M, nobody in here is going to remember that you got an extra bonus and it went back to the people. True?
We are very far along in our litigation, and we're not part of a class action.
Very far along. You just filed it 2 years ago.
Right.
It's not far along. From 1 in 10
I can't give you the...
to 15 years. Everybody here knows those things take over a decade.
This will not take that long. I can't tell you the details, but I know where we are relative to the process.
And if you make more than $47 million on the lawsuit, you're promising that that extra is going back to the people.
No, I'm not promising.
Well, you just said that.
I'm promising whatever we can get to cover the cost of the plant will go to the customers. If we're fortunate enough to get something more than that, we'll certainly make a decision as to what to do with it. But that decision hasn't been made.
Now, you said just before, you said it's all going back to the customer.
First of all, we took this on contingency, so a third of what we get is going to be legal fees, okay? We were not going to burden our customers with millions of dollars in legal fees for something that, when we first filed it, was very uncertain. Now that we're further along and we're feeling more comfortable.
Please listen to him.
If this lawsuit is not settled by 23, when your plant is done, and you're $47 million in the red, we are not going to feel any of that cost until you're, or ever, if you settle this lawsuit.
Sir, I can't answer those questions.
I didn't think you could.
All I can tell you is we are working hard on behalf of the customer. I can't give you any more assurance than that.
And we're going after this number.
We work for the customer. Anyone else?
Okay. All right, we want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Once again, our information is up on our website at www.middlesexwater.com.
Before we break, I know some of you, many of you are leaving with still concerns, still some anger. All I can tell you is we tried our best to give you all the information we have, and as I said from the beginning, either you believe that we're being honest and forthright or you don't. But I can assure you that we're working hard on your behalf. We've posted a lot of resources on the website, and feel free to reach out to the company if there's anything more we can share with you. So thank you.
I want to thank